Good evening, everyone. Members of council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Councillor Dunn?
Through your worship, I had a pecuniary interest on report LLS-24-18 because of property ownership.
Okay, thank you very much. So noted. Nothing further. Then we will look at the minutes held of council meeting, special closed meeting held April 9th. Looking for a mover and seconder. Councillor Verbicki and Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on that motion. All in favor? Motion carried. And also the same thing for the council meeting held April 9th. Councillor Hammond and Deputy Mayor. Discussion on that motion. All in favor? And carried. And is there any business arising from either of those minutes? All right. So before we move on with the regular portion of our council meeting this evening, we have a happy way to start things off. And I believe we have a presentation to be made by members of the Bank Theatre. So I would invite them to come forward.
Mayor Patterson, councillors, Peter Neufeld, and staff. I would like to thank you for the matching challenge you presented to us back in October to try and raise $400,000 for renovating the Bank Theatre. The task seemed daunting at the time, but we were up for the challenge. I'm happy to report that we were able to raise the full $400,000.
Nice.
In fact, we raised a little bit more. And there's still donations to come. We did it.
Yay.
Yay. We couldn't have done it without many generous donations, large and small. This is great news for the theatre, for the Uptown core, and for our whole community. This does not complete our fundraising efforts. But with these funds, we are well on our way to completing the theatre. Our goal is to complete as much as we can before we reopen. I saved the raising of the last curtain for Mayor Patterson, along with our fundraising team, because we've all put countless hours in. And I'd like to also invite up Michael and Francine Honey, because they have been our biggest supporter to pull off that final banner.
Awesome.
Come on up.
Let's do it.
Curled my hair for it.
Your Worship, thank you. Just before you all leave, I think that, I've served on this committee now for the past 4 years, and I saw the dedication put in by this group of people. And I think the testament is here tonight when you see 12 or 14 people up here who have put their hearts and souls into the revitalization of this Bank Theater. And for those that haven't already seen or looked at the conceptual drawings, you want to be sure to do that. It's going to be one of the flagships of our community when it's done. I think we owe this group of people who meet regularly. I think they're now starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I know for a long time, it's been difficult. They've raised, and I think they've been very modest tonight talking about the 400,000. I think they've raised well more than $1.5 million to put into this space. So we owe them a big round of applause again. Thank you.
Very much so. Thank you very much, Councillor. Appreciate that. So, and again, from all of us, thank you to the Bank Theater and all the fundraisers and so on. He said it better than I will, so we'll leave it at that. So now we will move on to our regular, less exciting, I guess, sometimes, council minutes. Move right into public session, or public meetings, and the first one is one regarding a zoning bylaw amendment. And Ms. Gibson is going to take us through this.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so this evening I'm here to talk about a combined consent and rezoning application that we have for two properties, 1109 and 1107 County Road 14. Administration received two consent applications to sever the existing dwellings on neighboring farms located at those addresses. These dwellings have been deemed surplus to the existing farming operation. The consent applications were submitted together with the necessary zoning amendments for both severed and retained lands. The first consent application, B0118, is located at 1107 County Road 14, and it's approximately 19.62 hectares, so just under 50 acres in area, and has 150 meters of frontage along County Road 14, and appears to be farmed with traditional row crops. The property is designated agricultural under the official plan and is zoned A1 under the zoning bylaw. The consent application seeks to create a surplus dwelling lot having an area of 0.28 hectares, so 0.71 acres. The existing single detached dwelling at the southeast corner of the farm is deemed to be surplus to the farming operation. The agricultural lot, which is to be retained, is proposed to have a lot area of approximately 19.34 hectares, so just under 50 acres at 47. The retained agricultural property will be rezoned from A1 to site-specific A1-12 to prohibit future residential uses and buildings. The lands to be severed for the surplus dwelling will be zoned to A5, that's agricultural residential, to reflect the existing residential nature of the uses. The second application, B0218, is located at 1109 County Road 14. It's approximately 20.48 hectares, so just over 50 acres, with 151 meters of frontage. On County Road 14, it also is farmed with traditional row crops. The property is designated agricultural under the official plan and is zoned A1. This application, similar to the other, seeks to create a surplus dwelling lot having an area of 0.51 hectares. The existing single detached dwelling, which is deemed surplus, is at the southwest corner of the farm lot. The lot to be retained is proposed to have a lot area of approximately 19.95 hectares, so just under 50 acres. The farmlands to be retained will be rezoned similar to the other application from A1 to site-specific A1-13 to prohibit future residential uses, and the land severed for the surplus dwelling will be site-specifically zoned to A5-56, and this is to reflect the site-specific provision necessary for an increased lot frontage and as well the residential existing uses. So upon review of the application, administrative Administration noted that the driveway of 1107 County Road 14 currently encroaches onto 1109 by approximately 1.72 meters, so just under 6 feet. The applicant has indicated that the driveway will be relocated so that it is solely situated on 1107 County Road 14. The proposed surplus dwelling consent applications meet the criteria set out in both the provincial policy statement and the County of Essex official plan. Both of them generally discourage new lot creation in prime agricultural areas. However, new lots may be created for residents surplus to a farming operation as a result of a farm consolidation, provided that the lot is limited to a minimum size needed to accommodate the existing residential use, and that planning authorities ensure that no new residential dwellings will be allowed on the remnant farm parcels in which the site-specific zoning achieves that. With regard to the municipal official plan, similar to the PPS and the County of Essex official plan, the municipal OP also permits creation of surplus dwelling lots in prime agricultural areas. Consents may be granted to sever an existing residential dwelling from a farm that is considered surplus to the needs of the farm operation as a result of a farm consolidation, provided that a number of criteria are met. Some of those criteria being that the farm is a minimum lot area of 10 hectares, it meets minimum distance separation, and that the surplus dwelling lot is of a specific size. Administration has reviewed the applications and noted that the criteria are met. However, I want to bring particular note to one of the criteria, that being that the owner must have owned or been part owner of the farm for a minimum of 1 year prior to the date of the application. So generally, administration receives consent applications to sever surplus dwellings from farmers who have recently acquired farm parcels on which there is an existing residential dwelling that they don't need, thus deeming it surplus to the farming that they want to take place on the property. So in order to do this, the farmer would need to own the farm land for a minimum of 1 year. So this instance, this application varies from that pattern slightly. The neighbors of these two farm parcels, Red Oak Farms, they've been farming the lands for a number of years, and they had approached the owners looking to purchase the farmland. And so doing that, the current owners of the property, the Armstrongs, they wanted to make sure that Red Oaks could do that. They applied for the consent applications with a purchase of sale agreement with Red Oak Farms. And so we accepted that application with the purchase of sale agreement. And after a lot of review, an opportunity was presented to us. So we consulted with legal and legislative services, and we are satisfied that the definition of owner for the purposes of the consent application and this particular criteria can include someone with a valid purchase of sale agreement. So for this reason, administration is satisfied that Red Oak Farms meets the requirement of being a bona fide farm owner acquiring additional farmlands, which include dwellings deemed to be surplus. So this is a great opportunity for us that was presented, and we're happy that we can use this in this application. So with regards to the zoning bylaw, the retained farm parcels, 1107 and 1109 County Road 14, they're currently zoned A1, and as I mentioned before, will be site-specifically rezoned to A1-12 and A1-13. And then the newly created surplus dwelling lots at 1107 County Road 14 will be rezoned from A1 to A5 and meets the zoning parameters of the A5. The surplus dwelling lot at 1109 County Road 14, again, will be rezoned from A1, but will be rezoned for a site-specific A5-56. The parcel will have an area of 0.51 hectares with approximately 78 meters of frontage. The maximum lot frontage for the A5 zone is 53 meters, so the site-specific provision is needed here to ensure that the lot meets conformity. And this is just because of the actual shape of the lot and what the residential use is. So in conclusion, the purpose of the public meeting this evening is to provide an opportunity for comments with respect to the proposed surplus dwelling lots and concurrent rezoning. Subject to receiving comments from the public, administration is in a position to state that the application as proposed are consistent with the policies of the provincial policy statement and provincial plans, conform to the policies of the County of Essex official plan, conform to the land division and agricultural policies of our municipal official plan, subject to the regular conditions, and comply with the regulations of the zoning bylaw as amended. And just to note that we did receive comments from the building department, engineering department, and the County of Essex, none of which have any concerns with these applications. So if concerns are raised at the public meeting this evening, further report can be presented to council from administration, noting the effect of the comments received with respect to the proposed applications. If no concerns are raised, it's requested that council consider granting provisional consent for the requested surplus dwelling lots and approval of the amending zoning bylaw the same evening. So upon council's approval, the required notices of decision for the combined consents and the notice of passing for the zoning bylaw amendment will be circulated. There is a 20-day appeal period during which objections can be submitted to the local planning appeal tribunal. Council should be able to demonstrate that the decision is consistent and conforms to provincial and local plans. So just as a summary, Planning Services is asking that council support this combined consent and rezoning application.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions from council? Deputy Mayor?
I would just like to comment, Madeline, on the new direction that we're taking on ownership. I think it's well past due. I'm glad planning could find a way to do it without causing too much kerfuffle, but I think we need to be more progressive in that area, and I commend your department for that. Thank you very much. It's going to take the load off, and hopefully we'll see a few more things like this move along. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Councillor Verbicki?
For the mayor, thanks. I know this is a different one because of the budding landowners and that too, but we are going to take this out of our official plan and our official plan review, aren't we? We're the mayor or CAO.
How do you mean take it out?
Well, that 1 year stuff. I mean, we've had,
Oh.
yeah. So we'll be coming out.
Peter?
That's the plan. We'll bring it forward.
Okay, no further questions from council. It's a public meeting, so I need to open up the floor in case anybody here in the audience is here to address council on this matter. I invite you to come forward now. If not, Councillor Hammond is willing to move, supported by Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move to the second public meeting, and that one is being led by Heather. Oh, there she is at the back. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry about that.
No worries.
We're here tonight for five different applications that have been submitted by Afria Inc. The subject lands are located at properties that range from 223 to 275 Talbot Street West, which comprise the Afria holdings at this time. The applications have come in as a combined consent and rezoning application, as well as 3 additional consent applications. The consent applications, the first 2 are for lot additions that will result in straightening out the rear lot lines of the properties at 245 and 255 Talbot Street West, which are the Tim Hortons and the Commercial Plaza properties. They are also proposing to rezone the lands at the rear, being the severed parcels, to be in the same zoning category as the lands to which they'll be added. So at present, the Tim Hortons and the Commercial Plaza property are both in a C2 commercial highway category, and the application proposes to rezone these lands, the severed parcels, to that same C2 category. Public notice for the rezoning application and the consent applications has been given in accordance with the Planning Act. I should have noted, there are also 2 easement applications. So these are also being done by consent. There is no rezoning affiliated with them. However, because the other 2 applications were coming to council, we added the easements into the same package so the applications could all be dealt with at the exact same time. The first one is an access easement, and on the screen that's shown in a yellowy green color line. The second one is highlighted in a light blue color, and that is for a storm sewer that connects from the rear of the property to the storm sewer that runs on Talbot Street West. The lands that are the starting point for this, so the subject lands, are currently occupied by the Afria greenhouse operation. Their main address is 265 Talbot Street West. Over the last, I want to say, a year plus, they have been acquiring lands. Our understanding is they now own lands that are shown on this plan as 223, 231, 239, 269, 271, and 275 Talbot Street West. In total, the lands are irregular in shape and have a lot area of approximately 27 hectares, which is 67 acres. Our official plan designates the north part of the property as agricultural. The south part of the property, which basically comprises the frontage on Talbot Street West, is designated Western Commercial District under our official plan. As I indicated previously, the front part of the property is zoned highway commercial, which is C2. The rear part of the property is zoned agricultural restricted, which is our A2 category. Parts of the lands that have been acquired by Afria in the recent past also include the agricultural hobby farm zoning, which is A3, and agricultural residential, which is A5. The area in which the subject lands are located consists of a mix of different land uses, with many open farms and greenhouse operations to the north and west, and to the south and east is primarily highway commercial development. As a result of our review of these applications and additional knowledge that we've gained from the applicants, one of the parcels that has been acquired by Afria is located at 271 Talbot Street West, and this parcel is zoned agricultural residential. Our understanding is that this parcel is to be used for purposes of a parking lot. Because we did include it in the public notice area, and so basically public notice of these applications was given, we are proposing to include the rezoning of this A5 parcel into tonight's applications. That is it's in our recommendations already. So this particular property, we're proposing that it be rezoned to C2, which is the highway commercial category. The property immediately abutting is already commercially used and also commercial highway category, so C2 zoning. We've received no feedback or comments from the public as a result of public notice. The provincial policy statement allows for lot additions and minor boundary adjustments, provided that no new residential lots are created. In this situation, we're not proposing any new residential lots. The proposed lot additions are consistent with the policies of the provincial policy statement. The County of Essex official plan also permits lot creation by way of permits minor boundary adjustments as long as new residential lots are not created. In this situation, there are no agricultural lands that will be taken out of production. It's also noted that the lands at 245 and 255 Talbot Street West are located in the settlement area. So these would be the Tim Hortons and the Commercial Plaza property. The proposed minor boundary adjustment and respective housekeeping zoning changes that we're proposing can be supported based on the policies of the county's official plan. The easements that are being proposed are also in accordance with the policies of the county's official plan. Leamington's official plan also permits the lot additions and minor boundary adjustments, including those in agricultural areas, provided that several criteria are satisfied. Firstly, both the severed and retained parcels must comply with the zoning bylaw regulations. In this situation, the severed lands will be consolidated with the lands to the south, so both of the severed parcels will be consolidated with the lands to the south, which will make the commercial plaza parcels larger. Both of these commercial parcels will comply with the zoning bylaw as they do now, once the lands are rezoned to the C2. So that when the lands at the rear are rezoned to C2, they will also be in accordance with the zoning bylaw. The severed lands must also merge on title of the lands at 245 and 255 Talbot West. This is another criteria that must be satisfied. So in this situation, as a condition of approval, the applicant will be required to consolidate both severed parcels with the lands at 245 and 255 Talbot West respectively. And lastly, the proposed lot addition will not result in the creation of a new residential lot that's located in the agricultural area. And as I indicated previously, there are no new residential lots proposed to be created. The proposed easements, as I indicated, are for purposes of the driveway and access, and the other one is for the storm sewer connection from the part of the Afria lands. The creation of the easements does satisfy all policies that we have and also the policies of the provincial policy statement and the county official plan. So planning's of the opinion that the applications conform to the land division policies of the OP, subject to the conditions that are outlined in schedules. They're all Schedule A, but they're figures 2, 3, 4, and 5. Most of these are standard conditions. The consolidation of the severed parcels to be added to the plaza and the Tim Hortons property have also been incorporated into the conditions. But other than that, the rest are standard conditions.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have questions on this one? Councillor Hammond.
Your worship, thank you. Heather, it's a long report. Those two parcels, Heather, that we're looking to rezone from A2 to C2, do we have, or do we know what the intended use of that's going to be once those properties are rezoned?
Through you, your worship, to be honest, I would prefer if Suzanne could maybe speak to that. She would have the most up-to-date information in that regard. She's here, the applicant.
I'm just going to have you state your name so that we can record it.
Suzanne Balzer
Yep.
for the applicant. In terms of future use, there has been some discussion that the portion that's going to be added to the Tim Hortons, what is immediately behind what would be, is it 263, and there's two residences
Yeah,
there.
259 and 263. Yeah.
That at some point in time, those portions may actually be added to those properties depending on what the use is going to be. But the expectation, since that is all zoned commercial, it would all become commercial. It was easier, though, for the purposes of dealing with it, that we simply create two parcels and add one to the Tim Hortons and one to the plaza. I think it was providing additional room. The point of the access, for example, at the rear was to allow for delivery of supplies and things to happen at the rear of these commercial buildings rather than at the front, where it's rather congested with the parking and traffic and things like that. So it may just be providing some additional space. The boiler room, my understanding is that there was some discussion of removing it. Right now, it is being used by the previous owner to the farm. It's used for storage of some sort. And I believe that boiler room may come down, so.
Okay. No one else? Okay, so again, public meeting. If anybody's here to address council on this matter, please step forward. And if not, okay. I've got a question here first. Councillor, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So either Suzanne or Heather. So if the building is still there, the boiler room is still there and is being used as storage, does that comply with the C2 zoning then? Or is that, then are we still doing agricultural purposes, functions on a C2? Because that wouldn't really fly, would it?
The farm no longer has agricultural business. Once it sold the greenhouse plant to Afria, it now no longer is in the farming business. So if there's anything in there right now, it would be related to commercial type, the commercial type storage.
Oh,
It's not agriculture.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you said the farm was going to store things in that.
Cachivalani and FM Farms, which now is no
Yes,
longer a farmer.
Right. So they're storing stuff in there?
They have some things in there right now, I believe, but those, this is very temporary at this point in time. They're utilizing the space for something, but it's not for farming.
Does that comply then, Heather, to you with the C2? Just, I mean, I'm not here to argue, but I would just like to know.
Through your worship, I do not have my zoning bylaw with me here tonight, and I would certainly think that in something that's sounds like farming wouldn't be listed, but I cannot confirm that. I apologize.
Mr. Neufeld?
I was just going to suggest that if there was something after the approval, that certainly the owners would take action if it didn't comply with the zoning. I don't think that that's a... We can ask the question once this has passed and make sure that it's in compliance.
Moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to the third public meeting, and that is also Heather taking us through that one.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an application for plan of subdivision and rezoning application public meeting. The plan of subdivision application is for a new subdivision called Bevel Line Village, which is located or will be located at 447 Bevel Line Road. The lands comprise approximately 9.139 hectares, which is about 22.582 acres in size. They're on the west side of Bevel Line Road, south of Seacliff Drive, east. Extensive pre-consultation discussions have occurred with the County of Essex and the municipality, as well as the applicant, over the past close to 10 years. This subdivision has had a lot of matters to deal with in terms of servicing as well as access. And now that the lands to the south and east have received their draft approval and approval for subdivision, it's time for Bevel Line Village to move forward. The application for subdivision is processed through the County of Essex, as well as the municipality. The county has deemed the application as complete, and they've requested that we give public notice of the application and also notify the various agencies that we normally would notify for different development applications. The applicant has also submitted a zoning bylaw amendment to create basically a site-specific zoning district that will apply to the lands in this subdivision. In accordance with the Planning Act requirements, a statutory public meeting is required, and that is the meeting that we have here this evening. A public open house was also held last week on April 11th in the gallery of the municipal building. I was in attendance, and Jackie Lassaline, the planner for the applicant, was also in attendance. We only had 3 individuals show up, but they were just interested in what was happening in this particular area. There were no negative comments or objections received at that time. Beveline Village subdivision will create 191 residential dwelling units, of which 38 will be single detached dwellings, 28 will be semi-detached dwelling units, and 125 will be townhouse dwelling units. It is proposed to be created in 3 phases, starting from the north end at Beveline Road. The subdivision will eventually connect to the south and to the east to the Gulfwood Lakes and Destiny Estates subdivisions. To the immediate west of the subject lands is the Bayview Park property. This part of this property is proposed to be developed for purposes of a dog park, and it will also serve the residents of the surrounding area. It will also contain a pedestrian connection to Beveline Village. To the northeast of the property is the Calvary Baptist Church, and the Hutchins Monument operation is located to the immediate direct north of the site. As part of the subdivision application process, the applicant has had to undertake a number of different background studies. These include a traffic impact assessment, a planning justification report, a noise and vibration impact assessment, an archaeological assessment, stormwater management report, and also the preliminary servicing drawings have been prepared and are in the process of being reviewed. The provincial policy statement provides for appropriate development while protecting resources that are of provincial interest. It's also important that public health and safety be protected, and the quality of the natural and built environment must be taken into consideration. The PPS provides for an appropriate range and mix of housing types, as well as densities. They are to meet the needs of current and future residents of our municipality, as well as the surrounding region. Any new development is supposed to be located within the settlement area, which this particular property is within. It is my opinion that the proposed subdivision is consistent with the policies of the provincial policy statement as it's been proposed to date. The County of Essex official plan directs development to areas within the settlement area. As I indicated, this particular property is within the settlement area and not the rural area. It's important to make sure that the lands are serviceable so as to prevent the premature extension of any municipal services. I'm of the opinion that, based on the information we have so far, that the proposed subdivision, having a subdivision in this location, conforms to the policies of the county official plan. Our official plan designates the subject lands as residential, which also permits a wide range of housing types and densities. This particular subdivision will be located in an area that's designated for residential development in the official plan and will fit in with the adjacent and abutting subdivisions that are currently being developed. The property's in an area that has access to municipal water and sanitary and storm sewers. The extension of the municipal services that's being proposed is appropriate, and it will assist in the continued development of this area. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment, first of all, the subject lands are zoned residential 3H, which is low to medium density residential zoning district, and the H is a holding zone that is put on the property to make sure that the lands are serviced or serviceable and that the arrangements are made for servicing and subdivision approvals in place before they're allowed to get any building permits. one of the zoning regulations that is being proposed for this particular subdivision in particular is a staggered front yard setback. And the staggered front yard setback is to help prevent visual monotony that you would have if you saw every single detached dwelling or dwelling unit with the same front yard setback and the same design as you drove down a long street. So this would help to break that up. The applicant is also proposing variations in what can be encroaching into the required front yard, such as a porch. They also want to make sure, though, from a safety standpoint, that all garages will be set back the appropriate distance in order to make sure that there would be no accidents as a result of that. As I indicated previously, the County of Essex is the approval authority for subdivision applications. Once the application was submitted to the county, they circulated the application and the various plans and background studies that accompanied the application package. They requested that we hold the public meeting, which we're doing this evening. All comments that would be received as a result of the circulation of the application and as a result of this evening's meeting will then be reviewed as they relate to the proposed subdivision application, and then a follow-up report and recommendation will be prepared for council at an upcoming meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only one question. I'm happy to see us moving forward with more building. This is fantastic for our community. Sewer connection, are we going Bevel or are we going back to Robson Road?
Through your worship, my understanding is the property, like sewage will go to Bevel line, but it will be going through a pump station that will be developed or built as part of this particular subdivision application.
Further to that, which is totally out of your realm, but does that change the Point Peely Bevel line when we have that many new houses coming into it? Costing? No?
It does not, and I can't comment as to where the sewage does go. I do know that there is a pump station. I did not think it was part of the Bevel sewage system. I thought it went on its own, on its separate sewer system, based on the pump station.
That's what I understood too, that its own connection to our pollution control plant, that it's not part of the Bevel line that we're already built.
It doesn't go into the Bevel line. I thought we were building that line down there and we were not
We are,
attaching.
but these guys aren't. They have their own connection to our PCC. That's the way I understood it originally, so.
I wouldn't mind knowing further if someone doesn't mind. That interests me, because if there's a way we can change things, that would be optimum, I think. Because I always thought that we were not going to connect, that we weren't going to connect from the golf course down to
Correct.
18. But if you're bringing this many houses in, if they could connect into Bevel, that changes that whole project.
So I see representatives here. Are you prepared to answer that?
Yes,
Okay.
I am able to answer that question. Daniel Pasta on behalf of the corporation, the applicant. With regards to your questions regarding servicing, so just to rewind a little bit, last year, 2017 winter, the town finished the Bevel Line Point Peely sanitary force main project. So it connected all the way down to Point Peely along Bevel Line Village up to the Leamington pollution plant. Part of that project, we've financially contributed in order to have a connection point at the mouth of our subdivision. At that point, so that's been constructed and left in place there. We've proposed a pump station right at the entrance, the mouth of the subdivision. Under instruction from Public Works and the engineering department, we have put together a joint servicing agreement with the adjacent developer of Gulfwood Lakes. So they'll have about 200 lots in their fourth and fifth phases of their development, and we have about 190, and we'll be serviced together. The pipes will be run in series together, and both Gulfwood's Phase 4 and 5 and our site will all go to this pump station at the mouth of our subdivision. And costs will be shared. We've come to agreement in terms of specifics, and engineering and drawings and all that have been being worked on in the last couple of years. The agreement will be executed in the coming few weeks, hopefully. But yeah, as soon as we're ready to break ground, we'll be connecting to that existing connection point that's already been installed by the town, and we've contributed to that. So that's all ready to go, just to address that question.
So I stand corrected then, that you are connecting to the new sewer line?
Correct.
We just put, okay, very good. Then I
Yes.
wasn't aware of that. But I think for all of us, it might be interesting if staff can come back, even just fill us in with the financial details, right, on that, so that we're prepared to answer. Deputy Mayor?
Well, and an explanation of how the breakdown goes.
Right.
Is it the cost of the connection that's added to it, or is it broken up into all the different properties? So if we could find that out, that would be very interesting. Thank you.
We'll direct our CAO to direct that to be done, so. Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Excuse me, my question was along the same line as the Deputy Mayor's. I was concerned about the sewage capacity, where it was going to go, because this is turning into a very high-density area. And I was just wondering about the capabilities, and will that new line be able to handle? Because now we have some of the Santos will be going into there, I presume, and then the Gulf States, as well as this new development. So I just wanted to be sure we had the infrastructure in place to handle that. That was my concern.
Mr. Neufeld?
Again, I can get more clarification from engineering. However, I think it's important to recognize that this development, as well as those other developments, have been on the books for a long time. In the design of the sewers, these things were known about, right? So I am quite confident that the capacity will more than exceed what is here. So I think the pipe is fine.
Councillor Berbiki?
Worthy Mayor, thanks. I guess it wasn't in, or I didn't see it in Heather's report, but the letter to from the school, will there be consideration for sidewalks, or, thanks.
Through you, Your Worship, there will be sidewalks in the entire proposed subdivision. So the north, approximately 2/3 of the subdivision will have sidewalks on both sides of the street. And then the southerly portion will have sidewalks on one side of the street.
Okay. This is sorry, Councillor Hammond?
Your Worship, thank you. My comments are not necessarily to the subdivision itself, but more in generalities. I think we need to do some prudent planning on our parts, because with this new development, we know potentially the Best Western is going to add an addition. We know that there are potential 75 new residents could be going in at the mini golf or the go-kart track. The Caldwell First Nations, once they receive their reserve status, and I'm talking now about the width of the road and how much traffic it'll be able to handle. And I think that we need to have some foresight in trying to determine. We certainly know we're going to have to change that stop sign in the corner of Sacliff Drive, which is an inside joke to all the people.
Well, you'll have to appear before County Council to have that discussion, because it's their road.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
But the conversation has to initiate from us.
Yep. Councillor Dunn? No? Good. All right, so still a public session. If there's anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to council in this regard, I invite you to come forward. And if not, so My quick question to you, Heather, and it's more of a request for more information other than just the engineering report we're going to get. This is 191 households that we're going to be putting to this subdivision. At some point in time, and not tonight, I'd like to know how many building lots we now have available in Leamington with all the various subdivisions that are either ready or will be ready in the near future. So just for talking points, if I could.
That's a far cry from the 18 we had a few.
Far cry from
yeah.
18, yes, yep. All right, so what are council's wishes? There's a recommendation before us, moved by Councillor Verbicki, support by Councillor Jacobs. Discussion on that motion. All in favor? And motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you. Moving right along, we'll hit into our first report of staff and delegations, and the first one is from the Essex Region Conservation Authority, Mr. Wyma.
This was broken before I started. Just for the Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I have my Director of Watershed Management Services, Tim Burney, as well with me this evening, should there be some questions that we need to jointly respond to. I want to take us back a little bit to December of 2017. After a number of years of review and discussion, the province of Ontario passed Bill 139, the Building Better Communities and Conserving Watershed Act. And among the changes proposed in that act to a number of different bills, it recognized that conservation authorities have played a very vital role in supporting conservation, restoration, development, and management of Ontario's natural resources for over 70 years. But more than that, the Act acknowledged that the continued growth of our municipalities and communities relies heavily on the work that conservation authorities do. That conservation authorities are vital partners related to climate change, natural hazard, wetlands, sustainable development, green infrastructure, and many other related programs. And in recognition of that, the Act included amendments that modernized the Conservation Authorities Act, which changed mostly for the first time since 1946 to recognize the changes that are taking place in our municipalities, in our province, and the roles that conservation authorities play to further that work. In Essex Region, our programs continue to demonstrate an ongoing and consistent response to very real and serious problems and challenges that we have. Land degradation, natural area cover, flooding and erosion, these are some of the same challenges that we faced upon establishment, but today we're seeing them in new ways. Instead of just point source pollution issues, we're dealing with non-point source pollution issues and phosphorus loading and nutrient management of our Great Lakes. Instead of just responding to flooding, we're responding to flooding that's been heavily impacted by climate change and climate adaptation issues. Our communities need to be developed sustainably, and we must consider the needs of residents and other needs and interests in the region. And each year we continue to develop and deliver programs that address those challenges. And 2017 was no different. And if we could show the annual report now, I'll come back and talk about some of the actions that we've got planned for 2018. Thank you. The work that you see in that video and the work that I'll talk about shortly relies on a strong board, and I'd certainly like to recognize Councillor Jacobs and Councillor Verbicki, who have represented Leamington well and, more importantly, have represented the region well. And along with the rest of our board, they've set a very ambitious agenda again for 2018. Before I speak a little bit about that, I want to talk a little bit about that 2017 was the final year of our 5-year sustainability plan. You've heard me speak about that plan in previous meetings with this council. And that plan responded to accumulated issues and challenges that we faced as an organization and positioned us to more effectively respond to the next generation of conservation challenges. And some of the highlights that you saw even on the video this evening in terms of creating a capital plan and capital plan reserves, where before we had none, and providing funding for infrastructure replacement that's allowed us to leverage funds to improve things like the beach washroom at Holiday Beach Conservation Area and upgrades to the infrastructure, water and electrical. We've created new accessible trails and boardwalks at Copagarn Woods and Maidstone Conservation Area. We've upgraded infrastructure at John R. Park Homestead, Hillman Marsh Visitor Center. As shown there, we completed the Cipher Systems Group Greenway, which included $1.1 million in external funding. We resurfaced the Chrysler Canada Greenway. That included over $250,000 in external funding from Ontario's 150 grant program. And over the 5 years, we also were able to extend it through the transfer station to connect to the town of Leamington trails. And finally, late in 2018, we threw another 3 kilometers of greenway in there by completing what's now known as the Rotary 1918 Centennial Hub, which links the Herb Gray Parkway trails with the Chrysler Canada Greenway, as well as the trails in LaSalle and Tecumseh, making it possible for somebody now to cycle all the way from Windsor to Leamington and beyond without ever being on a road, which is a pretty phenomenal part of what makes this region so great. We did, over the 5 years, eliminate our historic and accumulated operational deficit, which was as high as $478,000 5 years ago. It's zero today. We undertook an organizational restructuring that included consolidation from 7 to 4 departments and eliminating 3 directors and executive administrative position. And we invested those savings of that restructuring into key programs with declining or at-risk third-party funding supports. And that effort in itself has enhanced our research and science capacity in particular, which has resulted in new partnerships with the University of Windsor, the Great Lakes Institute of Environmental Research, and new research into possible contamination sources and environmental factors that are leading to beach closures, rural stewardship initiatives, including the Great Lakes Agricultural Stewardship Initiative, and water quality projects throughout the entire region, and in particular the Kingsville-Leamington Nutrient Study. That sustainability plan, in sense, has set us in a much stronger position as an authority. And built on those successes, in 2016, we launched our 10-year strategic plan called Sustaining the Place for Life. And that plan identifies 45 actions. And I'm not going to go through all 45 actions this evening, but I do want to highlight a couple of specific points with respect to each of the 5 main themes that we heard during that process. So firstly, and certainly a very close mind in this municipality, we heard that the climate will continue to change and we must continue to prepare and adapt to its impacts. In 2018, we will be, in 2017, our board approved moving forward with hiring a climate change specialist position that will help lead the development of a regional climate change strategy that addresses impacts and vulnerabilities, implementation needs, priorities, and potential funding supports. And we actually thought we were well on the way to that position, but unfortunately our prime candidate declined, so we're continuing to move forward in looking at how do we advance that very important regional initiative. We will be exploring the needs and options for updating our floodline mapping throughout the region and looking also at ensuring that mapping reflects overland as well as rainfall-based flooding. We are in the process right now with support from our 2018 budget, hiring a new regulations and engineering technician, which will provide added support, especially in the areas of stormwater reviews, drainage reviews, and related engineering and infrastructure reviews. And finally, we're continuing, and we are working, I should say, with municipalities to expand our own climate station network to include existing municipal climate station networks so that we can work together to have a more integrated network that can provide everyone with more timely advance warnings, response, and reporting and monitoring on storm events. Secondly, we've heard that the Great Lakes are our most significant natural resources and more must be done to improve water quality. And some of this we heard again just a couple of weeks ago on World Water Day in March, where we, along with every other conservation authority in Ontario, released our 2018 watershed report card. And those report cards provide a snapshot of the health of our watersheds based on a suite of provincial watershed health indicators. And it helps us identify trends and highlights where actions may be needed. It showed that Ontario's watersheds, including those in the Essex region, continue to be stressed by land use, by climate change, by invasive species, and that there certainly does need to be much more work done to improve the health of our watersheds. In February, Canada, Ontario released the the Lake Erie Action Plan, now known as the used to be known as the Domestic Action Plan, now known as the Lake Erie Action Plan for reducing phosphorus levels in Lake Erie. And I know your administration and council as well has been very active in various levels of development of that plan to ensure that it includes appropriate actions and program support for our ongoing monitoring and science, as well as some new projects in the watershed. Again, we'll be restoring another 100 acres of upland habitat, including at least 5 new acres of wetlands. And part of that, and you saw a video, on the video, it showed the work being done to the Sturgeon Creek wetland that we're doing in partnership with Caldwell First Nations. We're also right now constructing a new 10-acre wetland at Hillman Marsh that not only will enhance habitat, but also in partnership with the University of Windsor, and it's going to be bringing in some innovation designed to reduce phosphorus levels and monitor and identify different approaches that might be possible through wetlands to reduce phosphorus loading into the Great Lakes. We're also doing some work on the Detroit River as part of the Detroit River Canadian cleanup in the area of concern, including plans for a 70-acre wetland rehabilitation project at the mouth of the Canard and a new shoreline management strategy. Thirdly, people told us that our landscapes and habitats continue to be the most significant in Canada and that more action is needed to protect them. And part of this will include our own, working at our own sites, completing the development of management plan for Cedar Creek Conservation Area and the new lands that we've added to Cedar Creek over the last 5 to 10 years. We're also developing business plans for John R. Park Homestead and Holiday Beach Conservation Area to identify new supports and that may be needed. Through our capital plan, we've been able to replace aging and existing infrastructure, but what we're finding in some of our key sites like John R. Park and Holiday Beach, that the needs of our users have changed and the opportunities associated with that have changed, and we want to ensure that we can continue to address those needs with appropriate investment where it makes sense. We're also continuing to we have in 2018 also increased our capacity for operations and maintenance of our expanded Greenway network. When you add 25 kilometers of trail, there does come along with it now some increased demands on maintenance of those facilities. So with 80 kilometers now of Greenway, we needed to ensure that we had the capacity to manage those. And again, continuing to coordinate outreach projects in the region and provide curriculum-based education for more than 10,000 elementary and secondary school students, many of which are going through right here at Hillman Marsh in Leamington. Fourthly, we're going to continue working with municipalities and communities regarding sustainable growth and sustainable development, including completing consultation and finalizing our own Place for Life policies. And these are the policies that we use currently, board-approved policies that we use currently to comment on planning or development, or even those policies related to our different programs and the program delivery that we offer. Our goal through these Place for Life policies is bring them together under one policy framework so that we can ensure that we have very comprehensive commenting that we do with municipalities or with landowners, and also making it clear in terms of the way that we do. We are, again, continuing to work with Leamington and Lakeshore, Kingsville, Tecumseh, and LaSalle to complete official plan updates, and that's in addition to our ongoing advice and direction that we give municipalities. And again, this year we're expecting over 750 Planning Act applications, as well as over 1,000 Section 28 permit applications. And those numbers are high, and as I tell people, a few years ago in 2015, I delivered a presentation where I used numbers of our planning applications and permits, and in 2015 our permits were 563, and in 2017 they were 1,024. So that demonstrates, I think, tremendous growth in our region. It's also, IRCA itself has over those years, through support from our board, expanded our own capacity to ensure that we can continue to meet our timelines that we do provide and we do meet in keeping with the provincial criteria that are out there. And so we've been able to expand in keeping with the growth of permits in the region. And we've also, again, working very closely with your municipality, advocated and are participating in the Stormwater Drainage Master Plan study that's taking a look at impacts as it relates to changing land cover in some of the areas in Leamington, and we'll be extending that with our board support and board approval, trying to extend that to neighboring municipalities as well, to ensure that we collectively can be proactive in dealing with the impacts of that type of growth. Finally, we heard that IRCA continues to be a resilient and valued agency, and part of that is will be done again in 2018 in terms of preparing our next sustainability plan. And the way I capture this is our first sustainability plan looked at the sustainability of the organization. Our next sustainability plan needs to look externally at the sustainability of the region and what are the various outcomes and targets that we collectively want to achieve to see the continued improvements to our watershed and our watershed health. We'll also be updating our tangible capital asset report and our capital plan that's taking a look at replacement schedules and, as I mentioned earlier, new infrastructure and needs that may be required over the coming decades. We also, just a couple of weeks ago, launched a brand new website. Part of its design or redesign is to enhance customer service, usability, and accessibility. And so there's a lot more functionality now on our website that is available to visitors of the website that can assist in terms of processing and moving applications, as an example, forward, as well as through booking education programs, through some of the expectations in terms of what are the what you might need to consider, as an example, if you're interested in applying for a permit. And part of our process as well, when you were dealing with that level of support, is we've added a new administrative position that will enhance our customer and client service, and existing capacity has been redirected to help sort of act as an administrative clerk to our permits and planning processes so that we can continue to meet those timelines. Finally, in closing, we've continued to demonstrate a history of balance in projects and priorities with local investment, and we continue to understand that challenges that municipalities face. And as an example of that, in implementing our 5-year sustainability plan, including the introduction of capital and operational reserves, the elimination of our almost $500,000 deficit, as well as organizational stabilization, we were able to achieve that with no increase in levy contributions directly attributable to those outcomes. Our 2018 budget totals about $9.2 million, and that includes a levy contribution of about $3.1 million, and that's an increase of a little over $101,000, works out to about 9 cents per household, to a total of $16 per household per year. And of that increase, $51,000 is allocated for operations, and $50,000 continues to be set aside for future asset replacement in keeping with our asset replacement plan. The budget includes over $4.2 million in leverage funding, and that represents over 40% of IRCA's total budget. And when you combine that with fee-for-service revenues, almost 75% of our operational budget is funded through non-levy sources of funding. That level of funding consistently ranks IRCA in the top 10 of all 36 conservation authorities, and at the same time, our levy funds less than 30% of operations, which places IRCA in the bottom 5 of all conservation authorities in terms of levy supporting operations, which is well below the provincial average, which is approximately 45%. And if you break that down, sometimes when you talk about per household, we can look at it from a per capita perspective. And in 2016, the average Conservation Authority levy supporting operations was $15.62 per capita. And in IRCA's case, it was $8.47 per capita. So you can see that there's a wide distinction between the levy that we use supporting operations versus the average and certainly others in the Conservation Authority network. Given our daily reliance on natural resources, the projects, programs, and priorities that we implement are critically important to this region. We are making a difference, but we also need to increase the scope, scale, and intensity of our joint efforts. And ultimately, we want to create a place that we can be proud of and celebrate, and one that hopefully we can call home for life. So I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this evening. And between myself or Tim Burney, we're certainly happy to respond to any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wyma. I've got one real quick one because you touched on it in your speech, and Deputy Mayor McDonald and I just kind of looked at each other when you mentioned it. It was in regard to the University of Windsor working with you here in Leamington with 10 acres of wetland. Is it the property that we gave to them more or less, the old clay pit, or is this some?
This is a property that IRCA acquired a couple of years ago through our Clean Water Green Spaces program, and it's part of Hillman Marsh. So it leads into Lebo Creek, into Hillman Marsh.
So it's okay, yeah. So it's north of Road 2. Okay, okay. I had Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Worship. Great presentation. I just, you lightly mentioned the Sturgeon Creek project, and I just want to compliment IRCA as well as working with First Nations, because you've turned an unsightly area into a great piece of, I guess, wetland, and I think it's a great job. So that type of cooperation goes a long way. So I really appreciate what you've done down there. And if anyone hasn't noticed it, it'd be worth a ride down just to see the transformation there. So a great job on that, Richard.
Councillor Verbicki.
For the Mayor, thanks. Richard, does the Conservation Authority have anything to do with the helping of the eradication of Phragmites?
We certainly do what we can. We are members of the provincial group that's looking at Phragmites control. We're also doing our own actions that we can here, and as example of that was the project that we undertook, again with Caldwell First Nations at Hillman Marsh, where we emptied one of our cells so that we could drain it of water, so that we could undertake a cleanup program, essentially, of the Phragmites. So that was done last year, I believe, and so we're looking at understanding now that the spring is hopefully here, seeing what the results of that program were. But the challenge, as we all know, with especially herbicide controls of Phragmites, is that they can't be applied in wet conditions, and that's exactly the condition that Phragmites likes to live in. So it's a bit of a challenge. I know provincially and federally they're looking at tools that are able to be used on the other side of the river, essentially in Michigan and Detroit, where the chemical adherence and the chemical agents are slightly different, that it is safe in aquatic environments. I know that is being tested. I understood that was being about a 2 or 3 year process, and by my math, we should be nearing the end of year 2 of that process. So hopefully we'll find very soon the ability to make use of those applications in wider areas. There were some tests that were undertaken, one closest to us being in Rondo Bay, as well as another test site in Long Point. And so hopefully through the outcomes of those trials, there'll be some positive results that the provincial and federal governments will be able to translate into a broader application of herbicide controls, because it's at the point where we can do things on a case-by-case basis, even with a site as large as the wetland cell that we undertook in Hillman Marsh, but without a much broader and wider and more aggressive control program, it's very difficult to control that invasive, as we all know.
If there are no further questions or comments from council, I thank you very much, Richard, for making your presentation this evening. Thank you. Our next presentation, actually a two-part one we're combining together in regard to the restructuring of the Union water system. So Laura, you're starting us off.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Just briefly, you can go right there, Rodney, wherever you you need the president? I think Brianna has it. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Just before Rodney starts his presentation this evening, from staff, we wanted to provide council some information just from our perspective, that the administration representing all 4 municipalities have been consulted in the development of this financial structuring business case that Rodney and PricewaterhouseCoopers have prepared. We met with them back in September and have been working with them all the way through. Leamington administration agrees and very much supports the proposed development of the Municipal Services Corp. There are many benefits and opportunities that I'm sure Rodney will walk council through during his presentation. So it would be appropriate, I think, after Rodney's report and presentation, that council consider my recommendation and my report to support the business case. So I'll turn over to Rodney.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Patterson and members of Leamington Council. Just to start off, I guess many of you are very familiar with what we're going through here, so I'm going to try to keep it fairly brief since most of you are on the board of Union Water Supply System. So you know it's been a long go, and we've been working at this for a long time, and I'm glad that we're actually here and we can discuss it in front of council. So basically, just to start off, I'll do a little brief history for people in the audience that may not be familiar with. But so what is Union Water Supply System? Basically, it was just created in 1959 by the Ontario Water Resource Commission, which was a provincial agency, and it was to supply water to a number of municipalities in the area, so Leamington, Essex, a bunch of townships, and like Maidstone and other townships in the area, and that was its primary goal. So the Hines was a big part of that as well at the time. Kingsville and Township of Rochester joined in a little bit for in the future. So basically, this facility was owned and governed and operated by the province or various provincial agencies, so Ontario Water Resource Commission, then it was subsequently the Ministry of Environment, then it was Ontario Clean Water Agency. So they owned and operated this facility until typically basically 2001. As part of the Restructuring, Amalgamation, and Water and Sewer Transfer Act 1997, the province decided that they wanted to get out of the water and wastewater business, and they were going to download all these to the municipalities. So at that time, the system was going to be transferred to the 4 amalgamated municipalities of Leamington, Kingsville, Essex, and Lakeshore. So that happened in 2001 as part of a transfer order. Now, since the new amalgamated municipalities had this new system they needed to take care of, they retained Ontario Clean Water Agency to basically run the facility because they had no experience with that. So a contract was entered into that. So just to give a little bit example of how the system runs, it's basically the 4 municipalities are owners in common, tenants in common, and they basically own parts of the Union Water Supply System based on the water demand that they use. So that was started based on 1998 demands, but we've reset that in January 1st, 2017. So basically every 4 years we have to look at the water demands from the 4 municipalities and establish their actual ownership. So as of January 1st, 2017, Leamington owned a little over 50% of the system, Kingsville a little over 40%, Essex just about 7%, and Lakeshore a little over 3%. This is basically a quick graphic of how the system works. So you're very familiar with this, but you have the 4 municipal owners, and then you appoint your board members based on how much water. Every municipality gets 1 board member, then you get an extra one for every 10% that you use. So Leamington has 6 board members. Kingsville now has 5 because we've upgraded that based on their ownership. Essex has 1 and Lakeshore has 1. So the Board of Management has some discretionary power, so they can set the wholesale rates for each of the municipalities on how much we sell the water to them, and then they take care of it from there to their own customers. So we have some assets under Union Water that are known common assets, or they're owned between the 4 municipalities. The Joint Board of Management manages these assets on behalf of the municipalities, and myself as the manager does that work on behalf of the board itself. So we have 4 water towers, we have a pumping plant on Lake Erie, we have a treatment plant in Ruthven, and we have a reservoir and a booster station in Cotton. We also have about 140 kilometers of common water main, which we like to think of transmission mains, but they're not true transmission mains. So there's always been a little bit of history with there, but I think we've come together to make that work. So this is basically a quick schematic of how drawing of how big the system is. Actually, the furthest point that we provide water is to the OPP station on Manning and the 401. So the water goes pretty far. We service a large part of the county. Like I said, we just pump it, treat it, and send it to the municipalities. They take care of the local distribution. So we've been looking at governance for a long time, about 10 years, with my predecessor, so starting in 2008. I mean, there's a lot of good things that work well with the system right now, the existing arrangement. I mean, the board gets along very well, which is great. And, you know, they're very forward-thinking, which is amazing, and it's good. And we have projects that we can fund ourselves. Everything goes well. It's when we get to other projects that are other issues that things fall apart a little bit. So what are these issues? So we basically have, Union Water Supply System has no legal standing. Transfer order is the only thing that we have as a document, and it only says we can do a few things, such as we have to manage the assets, we have to upgrade them as needed. It doesn't give us the mechanisms to do that. The only thing we can do is wholesale water, and that's the only source of revenue we have, and that's the only access that we have. If we need financing to do bigger projects, we have to ask the 4 municipalities to finance on our behalf, based on the ownership percentages that they own. So If we have to go get a $10 million loan, 50% of that loan would go on Leamington books, 40% of that loan would go on Kingsville books, and so on and so forth. So they have to come together. They all have to agree to that, because if one doesn't agree, then who takes their percentage? It doesn't work. All four have to agree. And so that's one of the issues that we have. We can't self-finance and get loans. We also can't get grants, which is, if you get some nice grant funding that's coming your way. A couple years ago, there was a Clean Water and Wastewater Fund that all the municipalities received some pretty decent grants here, Leamington as well. A couple million, if not 3 million here, and Essex had 1.3 million. Kingsville had fairly large as well. We can't apply for those directly. So again, we got to apply through the municipalities, which can create an issue because it competes. You want to apply for your own, or you're going to give up a portion of it for us, for Union Water. There's some competition there, so that's an issue. And of course, one of the points is each municipality has, their own priorities on what they want to do with their funding and their grant money. So governance started in 2008, 2009. Basically, went through a bunch of work there. There was workshops, there was surveys. Nothing really got achieved from there. It didn't move forward at all. There was no consensus on moving anything. 2012, this is right after I came on board, so I built on the previous governance reviews, and was basically looking at, how can we address those bigger questions that are out there to get self-funding, obtain grants, and basically have a little bit more of our own say in how the Union Water supply system works. So we did an evaluation through that, reviewed the previous information, went through a lot of jurisdictions, just went through there, and I identified a number of organizations or types of organizations that could work for us. We looked at different models. So there's some ownership options, some corporate structure options. So we came out with about 12 different mixes of things that could work for us. The one that came out on top that could address all of our concerns, if it was constructed appropriately with the right legal documents and the right financial plan, would address all of our issues, which is a municipal service corporation. So we looked, like I said, we looked at a bunch of different options there. And so the Municipal Services Corporation was basically the preferred model. So 4 municipalities basically would work the same way. So we have, instead of being owners in common, the 4 municipalities get together, they create this corporation, they own the shares, on the same basis. So you would have, based on the water usage every 4 years, each municipality would own, it would be the same way that it's constructed right now. So Leamington would own 50%, Kingsville own 40%, but as shareholders of a corporation instead of tenants in common. The board members would be appointed the same way every 4 years, so each municipality could appoint their board members for every 10%, and then have one for each municipality. Nothing would really change on that aspect. The only thing that would change is it would become a corporation. So to move on that work that was done in 2012, where the board said we should look a little bit more at it, we retained basically a legal expert, so Willis Business Law, which they're in attendance today, so they can answer some of the questions. And also we retained a financial expert, PricewaterhouseCoopers, to prepare a financial business case to look at, can we do this municipal services corporation between the 4 municipalities. So basically they did the review, and from the legal side, it said, yes, we can establish this. We can establish a municipal services corporation between the 4 municipalities that would legally address these issues. From the financial side, PricewaterhouseCoopers identified a business case from the financial plan that identified a mechanism that would address all our concerns. We could become creditworthy and get our own funding. We could apply for grants. We could, for new debt, for sure, potentially it would not go on the new municipal books if we had a lot of big projects that we want to do, which that's important because we have about $25 million worth of proposed capital works in the next 8 years, about 30 million in the next 10 years. And I would say at least 15 million of that is earmarked for the next 5 years. So we need to have those funds available to do the work. And if we can't self-finance and get grants or whatnot, then the municipalities basically have to work with us to get that funding. If it doesn't work, then we have to increase rates dramatically. and that would be reflected to the customer. So if we had these 2 or 3 years of massive rate increases, I don't think that would work very well for the consumer and for the municipalities. So basically, I already mentioned the ownership shares and everything would be looked at. Everything would be the same. The only thing that would change would be a corporation owned by 4 municipalities, operate the same way. We can get our own funding and we can apply for our own grants. So in the meantime, I mean, based on, if we create that corporation, we would still use Ontario Clean Water Agency to do our operations, because that works well. We'd probably still retain, the municipality of Leamington to do our financial administration as they do now, because that works well. And just all these things would just be formalized in agreements. Right now, they're not formalized, they're informal. We would just formalize everything. So nothing would really change. So those are the benefits. The benefits are, we could get funding. We could apply for grants. We'd have a legal status. If need be, if as we do more projects and potentially things get better, Union Water itself could hire staff, right? There's a lot of things we can do that we can't do right now. So that's the purpose of moving this forward. So the next steps is, this is where we are right now. The next step is we present this to the 4 municipal councils of the 4 owner municipalities. So on April 9th, we were at town of Kingsville. We presented it there. On April 16th, we presented it at the town of Essex. Today we're here, and tomorrow we're at the town of Lakeshore. And so we're just basically asking the 4 municipalities to adopt the business case that was developed by a combination of Willis Business Law and PricewaterhouseCoopers to create the Municipal Service Corporation between the 4 municipalities, so that we can move ahead and start basically becoming a sustainable water utility for the 4 municipalities. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Rodney. I think for the Deputy Mayor and I probably both feel the same about this. This has been a forever project, and I sincerely hope it happens. I don't think you're going to get any arguments from our council. We've been focused on moving this forward for a long, long time. And I hope you can make this happen with the rest of the so-called owners. And to me, it's always been about, you mentioned the debt that we're going to have to go into for financing the projects, $15 million in the next few years. And if this corporation isn't set up, then that debt sits on our book, right, here at the municipality of Leamington or Kingsville. We're the 2 biggest. And so we get punished the most when that happens. So I think the day is long overdue when we get freed up from that obligation. My question to you, though, is maybe you could explain to those who don't know this, what happens if Leamington and Kingsville say, yes, 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 and one of the other 2 or both of the other 2, Lakeshore and Essex, don't go along?
Through Mr. Mayor, I think I may want to ask William Willis here, our legal expert, that could help us answer that question.
Okay. What did you? Oh, okay.
Good evening, Your Worship. The question...
I'm just going to have you introduce yourself for our records. So.
Oh, sorry. William Willis from Willis Business Law. The question you're asking may be a difficult one to answer. So we're actually hoping, given the way we've structured this, that it's business as usual, other than the formation of the corp in terms of governance and ownership. And it took some time to get there, to come up with a strategy to get us there. We're hoping that we don't have to answer that question. It's not something we've studied in detail at this point. If one of the owners doesn't support it, it's something that we'd have to look into further to determine whether or not you could proceed without them. But as owners in common, it may not be something that you can do without provincial intervention, or some kind of negotiated strategy to deal with perhaps the one municipality that didn't want to move forward. So it's not something we really have a great answer to at this point in time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's short and sweet for me. I have the Deputy Mayor first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we'll hope when the largest shareholders are all for it, that the smaller ones will certainly buy into it and see the reason and common sense to it. Rodney, I want to say you've taken us a long way. I think we needed to focus on that little tiny seed. We were looking at the big picture, and that's why we got nowhere. You got us out of the weeds and focused on the one thing, and you know that you're basically preaching to the choir minus one. And I think he'll probably go along with us. If not, well, we're the majority. But technically, you are taking us from a cumbersome structure to lean. And that's basically what we need. We want things to be easy and still retain ownership. And I think that's probably what's making some people be afraid that they're losing control, but we obviously still have control. We still have the same number of people represented on the board. The board will still be making those decisions. It's just that freeing up of the money and the fact that you can get grants. That, to me, that's common sense. Why would we not take opportunity to get basically free money? That's just silly. So for me, and I'm speaking for the rest, and I shouldn't at this point until the vote's taken, but for us, this has been a process, and we're glad to see it coming to almost to fruition, and particularly before the next election. Because to not get this done in the next few months, to bring on new people, because there probably will be some new people, at least at some facet of the board, we'd have to go back to square one, because it is, it's been a learning process. It certainly isn't something that's understood overnight. So anyway, I want to thank you for that, and we're sure going to hope tomorrow night's the kicker. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn? Okay. Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. I guess the biggest concern I have, and has been from day one, I think we all talked about way back when, was the assets of each municipality. There's miles and miles of this stuff buried in the ground that no one ever sees. Is this going to be a holdup, how we get that straightened out? I know that was a big bone of contention way back when. What would be the process for something like that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll address one part of the question, and maybe the legal side. I don't know if William can take a stab at it, but so basically, yeah, the common water main assets have always been an issue, and who owns what, because they're not true. I mean, the system was constructed in '59 and had water mains that were constructed with it, and those expanded slightly, and then there were some more added, and so some are larger water mains that convey water from one end to the other, and so they're kind of transmission mains, but they're not, because there's services coming off of them. So they're kind of a combined asset, which makes it difficult. However, in 2008, there was the four municipalities there was an agreement created by my predecessor, which was presented by the four municipalities that were somewhat agreed in principle on what were the list of water mains that could be considered transmission water mains that basically serve the entire system, and that would be under the jurisdiction of Union Water Supply System instead of the local municipalities. So that's about 140 kilometers of water mains. So those are the bigger ones that basically bring water from the plant to Leamington, to Kingsville, through Kingsville to Essex, and to Lakeshore. So so there hasn't been really, I mean, there's still some, there's not an issue with, that agreement per se. There's still some issues once in a while on, well, how do we fix them? How do we repair them? Because Union Water System doesn't have a crew and the municipalities do. So sometimes there's a little bit of friction on, well, we have to go fix your water mains, and yeah, well, we pay you for it, right? So stuff like that. But I think that set of water mains that was agreed to in 2008, which we call the common asset water mains, I think that's been dealt with. And that's the only assets, water main assets, that we would transfer over to the new corp. Anything else, all the other pipes underground remain to all the municipalities, right? All the other ones, they're all yours, and they stay where they're supposed to be. So we just want that set that brings, water to the booster station in Cotton, water to the Essex Tower, water to the Leamington Tower, to the Alberta Tower. So we need access to that infrastructure, which basically makes the system work, right? Right? So those are the ones that have been agreed to in 2008, and we agreed to them, and the board agreed to them again with the municipality. I think it was, and again in kind of a handshake agreement in 2013, and those are the ones that would be transferred. Everything else would remain the property of the municipalities, and that's the way it would be.
Okay. Mr. Neufeld, do you want to address a comment?
Yeah, just further to that, I know this issue was dealt with, or was raised before I became the CAO, but since that time, we've also had discussions with Rodney about these assets. And so I have a couple of comments about that. One, we believe that if there are some assets that are still sitting out there and somewhat contentious, they are limited. There are only a few of them. And we've worked with Rodney to look at these issues, and we don't think that it's important enough to hold up this work, because there is a commitment to look at these things, but really our focus is setting the stage going forward. How do we deal with the future assets? The ones in the past are the ones in the past, and you can't always go back to fix those things, but we also don't want those to become an anchor around our necks while we try to move forward. So between the two administrations, working with Rodney and in particular Rob Sharon, in principle, we understand that there may still be a couple out there that maybe don't make sense, but we're okay with living with that. That's history. How are we going to deal with it in the future? That's the most important component, and on that basis, we don't see that that's an issue to hold this up.
I agree on our behalf. I'm just concerned about the other 3 municipalities involved in this, and I think, as the mayor said earlier, we brought this up quite a while ago and almost got thrown out of a building, but that's where my concern lies. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Worship. And Rodney, thank you for a great report. As the Deputy Mayor said, I am the one council member up here that doesn't have the privilege of being a part of your board, so maybe not as enlightened as the rest. What I'm wondering, you got a pretty aggressive project list there, it sounds like. What's the time frame for all this if all the municipalities do agree to it? How long does it take to form this corporation?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask our legal expert to answer that.
About an hour to form the corporation, so that's the easy part. And that's actually the truth. But the work that follows, obviously there's going to be some time to implement after the corporation's formed. We have to go through the process of actually transferring all of the UWSS assets over to the corporation. We'll need an agreement with each of the municipalities to deal with the water bill and various other agreements and things that come out of it. So, I mean, it really depends on the timeline that everybody wants to work towards. But I would certainly think it's a matter of months rather than weeks for sure.
Well, actually, I thought the 1 hour time limit was a good one. Let's stick with that. Yeah. Ronnie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So basically, just to add to that, it's to reiterate what William was saying, is that formation of the corporation is fairly easy, and that's all we're asking for, is basically the authorization from the four municipalities to create that shell corporation. It's just a shell, right? All the agreements are subsequent to that. So there'd be, agreements that would be crafted between each of the municipalities to transfer assets. There'd be agreements with the municipalities to future, common assets, how they would be developed. There'd be agreements for, formalizing the agreements between Union Water Supply System and Leamington, or, doing services. Who's going to do the repairs on certain water main? Everything would have to be formalized after the fact. So those would take a while to do, and probably a few months, but I mean, we just want to create the shell right now so we can start working on that, and that's what we're hoping for the four municipalities. And I'm actually quite pleased with the response so far, and I think we could probably achieve our goal.
Excellent. Mr. Neufeld.
Just one of the questions I had, when you had the map up showing, I don't know if you can get back to it or not, but the map showing the assets. I know that the structure of the shares is dependent on or determined by the usage of water. But it's interesting to me, I don't, are there any assets actually in Lakeshore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, there are not. So the majority of the, I mean, there's a water tower in Essex. There's two water tower in Leamington. The Albuna Tower is in Kingsville. Most of the assets are actually in Kingsville, and most of the water main assets as well. Lakeshore, there are no assets at all in Lakeshore. So basically, we have billing meters right at their municipal boundary, and that's where it stops.
And Councillor Verbeke.
Well, the mayor, I was going to ask Rodney this question, but he's going to go to legal, so I'm going to go and ask Laura this question. Maybe you can go to legal. Do you get a warm and fuzzy feeling talking with your peers over this, with the other financial people? Have you met with the other financial people, or are you just presenting this based on Leamington doing the books for Union Water?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I haven't had a we haven't had a group conversation, I guess, on this topic, except for the time when we were all participating with the development of the business case. And I think Rodney's report cleared it out, or called it out quite clearly, that the administrations did not all agree unanimously that this was the proper way to proceed. Certainly, my opinion and what's reflected in my report is in the best interest of this municipality. But in speaking with some of my peer treasurers, yes, they believe and agree and support for all the reasons that Rodney has said. I mean, the access to new debt and grant funding. There will be benefits to the municipalities as well. It won't be immediate, but it does provide for some relief, based on my research, on our debt repayment limit. So right now, we have to record Union Water's interest and our principal that we pay, and that counts towards our amount of debt that we have, and then it reduces the amount that we can go out and raise in a given year. So by reporting it differently on our financials, it will be an investment that we'll be reporting, and we will lose that debt component. So there is a benefit, definitely, for Leamington.
One more follow-up. I guess this is, I don't know if it's constitutional or not, but legally, isn't this going to be like a referendum? 50 plus 1%, take it over, or how does this work now? I mean, I know you said there'll have to be agreement, but, you know, pay as you go, or, I mean, I know you're going to cross that path, and hopefully everything goes okay. I mean, we're just a little bit premature in assuming what's going to happen, but all the best to you, and thanks, and it's been a go.
Rodney?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So basically, just to report back a little bit, so of course the Town of Kingsville Council at the April 9th meeting basically endorsed the adoption of the business case in principle, so that moves it forward from that end. Town of Essex, we have not heard from them directly, but indirectly there was a question from the CAO that came to me and said, well, how do we move, what do we need to do to move this forward from our side? So I provided that answer, so I'm expecting that there'll be probably something at their next council, hopefully at the next council meeting, but there'll be an answer soon. And here, we'll see what the decision is. And if you look at the, so we're presenting at Town Lakeshore tomorrow. The agenda's already out. The recommendation's already been made to endorse this in principle.
Good.
And they also have another recommendation that they want to do an in-house legal and financial review to see if basically being part of Union Water is to their best interest. So, so they're looking. That's the recommendations that they're in their agenda. So, but they did endorse it in principle. That's for us. So that's why I'm saying that I think it's positive at this time. So,
okay. Very good. I know our CIO has been in the trenches a little bit more than most, so you had a comment towards that?
Just a follow-up on your question, Councillor Verbeke. This administration has spent time looking at this issue, both from the corporate structure perspective, the risk perspective, financial legal perspective. And this administration strongly supports this recommendation and encourages our council to do so as well. It's a difficult situation, though, when we hear so often, oh, it's in the best interest of the region. This is in the best interest of the region. This is essentially what we have here is a regional water system. And municipalities, though, step back and say, well, what is in our own best interest? And that's what we're supposed to do, right? But in this particular case, looking at all of the benefits that Rodney has brought forward and that this structure has brought forward, I would suggest that we not stop there and ask the next question, and that is, what is the risks of moving forward? And quite frankly, I don't see any risks in moving forward. I only see risks in not moving forward. Right? So I just wanted to give that background that Rodney has had many discussions with me and us as administration, and we strongly endorse this.
Councillor Dunn, sorry. Oh, you're making motion to accept, okay. Moved by Councillor Dunn, supported by the Deputy Mayor, that the recommendation that we move ahead with this change in governance. Further questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Onward we go.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Our next report this evening is one regarding tourism development strategy. Ms. Knapp.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of Council. The purpose of my report tonight is to update Council on the projects we've been working on, particularly over the past 3 months, the current priorities of the tourism portfolio, and the 3-year, so 2018 to 2021 tourism development strategy. First, I'd like to take a moment to recognize some of the tourism partners that we have in the room today. We have representation from the Chamber of Commerce, the Bank Theatre, the BIA, Tourism Windsor Essex, Pelee Island, and Hogs for Hospice, and well wishes sent from the Leamington Fair. It's important to acknowledge that the tourism industry in particular cannot exist without these community partners. They are tourism businesses and attractions, representatives from regional organizations, event planners, and community leaders. So I want to thank them for taking the time of their evening to hear more about the exciting direction that we're headed. What they can look forward to promoting, and the ways in which we're all working together for a common goal. The goal of tourism as a branch of economic development is to create an environment that will attract and grow tourism-related businesses, highlight and augment existing tourism products. So tourism product includes transportation, visitor services, food and drink, accommodations, attractions, and things to experience, support new tourism events and initiatives, and promote Leamington as a destination. Tourism, much like economic development, can be a broad field. It includes tourism development, business retention and attraction, special events, and marketing and communications. It also has the potential to reach an expansive range of people from different backgrounds, people who are local, provincial, national, and international. Because of its potential for growth, in order to be effective, we have to have a good understanding of our target audience, our strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. And then we can focus our efforts on a few key strategic priorities that will have the largest overall impact on the Leamington tourist experience. So to help us assess these strategies, we need to know a few things. What is our target audience? Who are the types of tourists who visit Leamington already? And what types of tourists do we want to attract? So as most of you already know, a tourist is someone who's traveling to a destination outside of their home community. This is for pleasure or for leisure. In Leamington, a tourist is anyone who travels here from a 45-plus kilometer radius. That population is noted in the first picture. And the second picture represents the limits of our marketing area in the 3 years that I've identified in our strategic plan. So we're looking to, as a whole, market initially within Windsor Essex and Chatham-Kent, Southeast Michigan, and Northeastern Ohio.
expand to the London area, and as our tourism product grows, we continue to expand our demographic and our marketing target audience. So we also recognize the majority of existing visitors to Leamington are coming to visit friends and family. So having a strong, well-informed members of our community is key to communicating that Leamington tourism message, and having community ambassadors is very important. I think I'm missing it. So I'm just missing a slide. When establishing our tourism priorities, we looked at various product trends in the tourism industry. So these are consumption of experiences over material goods, active adventure with a focus on nature, culture, and physical activity, creative tourism. So those are authentic experience which provide a sense of place. So this is what we're talking about when we mention the Leamington experience that you can't get anywhere else. Whole living, so that's experiential travel focused on well-being. Food and drink and agribusiness, so this would be partnerships with chefs, restaurants, growers, and producers. So our tourism pillars are the pillars that tell the story of Leamington and what make it unique as a destination. So our first pillar is outdoor adventure, parks and trails, water sports, boating, motorcycling, cycling, waterfront activities, and camping. The second is festival and events. And the third is an emerging field, so things that a field that's very important to us, but that we are also working on as part of our strategy. This is culinary and agritourism. So who are our tourists and who do we want to attract? We have existing segments. Those are nature lovers, so families with a passion for the great outdoors. They're happy with the basics, camping in a tent, spending time with their families, taking in the beauty all around them. We have the mellow vacationers who are over 40, skewing towards the 55-plus age bracket. They're vacationing without children, looking for a relaxed time, and traveling is used as an opportunity often to visit with their friends and family. We have family memory builders. These are couples with young children in the 35 to 54 age bracket. They're Generation X, and they're parents who've built their lives around their children. And for leisure for them is about spending that quality time with their family. It's an opportunity to come together. And then we have a target market, which we have some work to do to tap into. And this is connected explorers. So those are couples under the age of 40 with or without children. Confident, optimistic, open-minded, a deep need to travel and experience new things and be exposed to new experiences. Travel is all about expanding their horizons. They enjoy a full schedule of activities, and they use technology extensively for researching, booking, planning, and sharing their travel experiences. The last group is up-and-coming explorers. So these are comprised of young families with kids, primarily from the U.S. They're diverse. 45% of them are visible minorities. 40% of them are immigrants. And they're emerging into a new life phase. They're looking for fresh experiences to travel. And although they are adventurous and energetic, their travel experiences often start with nearby tourist attractions. So this is what I was talking about when I mentioned a lot of that Michigan, Ohio area as well. So I'd like to focus on the last two segments just a little bit more. You may be used to describing these tourism segments as quote-unquote millennials, which I think often has a bit of a negative connotation, but I wanted to give you a snapshot of why this market is so important for us. So who's going to be traveling over the next 5, 10, 15 years? Where are they spending who's spending money in communities? What are their interests? And how do we ensure that we're offering what these travelers want to experience? Some of you may have seen this at the SWATC conference, so our regional tourism organization. This is the projected population by generation. I promised myself I wouldn't repeat this saying, but I'm going to, is that there are two sure things in life, taxes and, well, so when we look at the communities that are coming and spending their money, we really need to target the millennial because they're not only going to be spending their money immediately in the 2018 to 2021 timeframe that I've identified, but they're also going to be the ones that are continuing to spend money, and their population is going to be growing into 2050. So this is also very important, that there is an estimated Canadian millennial population of 9.3 million, Percentage of Canadian population that are millennials are 25.6, so a quarter of the Canadian population are millennials. And every year, I think this statistic really stuck with me, is that there are 270,000 new millennial households forming every year. This is also important, I think, when we talk about the types of people that are settling in our communities, putting their children in our schools, buying properties here. I think that those statistics have really stuck with me. So we know that there's a lot of us. I use the term us because I am a millennial. Shocking, I know. I look so much more like a Gen Z, right? So what are millennials interested in? First and foremost, millennials, 55% of them say that food and drink is their top priority when they're looking, or when you talk about their interests. The good thing is that you got to eat everywhere you go, so this is something that we need to focus on, and this is why predominantly we have put culinary and agritourism as one of our pillars, because you do see it as a huge interest for the millennial population and other populations as well. I don't want to say that I'm only focusing on that. And then travel and adventure, so creating that sense of place. So this data, I think, really shows us the direction that we're headed in. Understanding that the trends in tourism and the growing tourism sectors is so important when we developed our strategy and as we're moving forward. So as I mentioned, our tourism strategy is outlined in 3 years. Much like our economic development plan, our actions in 2018 are foundational. We're focusing on stakeholder relationships, gathering data, product development, and building our tourism brand. And I outlined some of these terms that I'm talking about in my report as well, so product development, tourism partners, so that we can get a better understanding of exactly what that means. So our first priority is product development, creating and developing experiences. We've focused on connecting with existing businesses, some without a specifically tourism focus right now, and this is to help develop experiences within the community. So these types of experiences that are on trend right now aren't necessarily bricks and mortar. They're not necessarily bricks and mortar, and they're not typically bricks and mortar. They're part of a visitor journey that they can't get elsewhere because the stories that are shared are uniquely Leamington stories. They could include hands-on workshops, guided tours and rentals. A good example of this is we've been in conversations with Caldwell First Nation about if there are guided tours available through perhaps Point Pelee National Park or on our trails, where people can take a guided tour and learn about Indigenous medicine or Indigenous history in the area and what that means for us. So yeah, these types of experiences really enhance the visit when people are coming to Leamington. It fleshes out your itinerary. It gives you something to do. Cooking classes is another one. Another initiative that I flagged and that we'll be working on this year is we're working with an agency as part of a market readiness program. So that will help us identify where we can build our existing tourism product. So what are the gaps in the tourism product that we have and where can we really build on that? As I mentioned in my report, tourism product development not only requires the existence and creation of infrastructure, facilities, and services, but also the development of specific activities and experiences. More specifically, we'll be doing corporate calls, workshops, helping potential businesses with access to grants and research. For example, there's a newly created tourism innovation lab that's run in Windsor, Essex, that we'll be helping partners match with. And this is to help them deliver tourism experiences and develop them. This also includes connecting businesses from the rest of Windsor, Essex to expand their offerings into Leamington. So there are some already happening businesses that exist maybe in the core of Windsor that have the potential to offer those same services at an exceptional level in Leamington. It's not reinventing the wheel, I suppose. Our second priority is business retention and attraction. So making sure that we have a community that's ready and able to accept tourism-related businesses. The majority of this work is spearheaded by the Economic Development Office and drilled down to the Tourism Office for that sector. We're making sure that we're ready to welcome investment when it comes. And it primarily consists of identifying what types of tourism businesses we need in our community based on tourism trends. For example, a brewery. and supporting the businesses through the development process, as James identified in his presentation at the last meeting, making sure that we look to the future of development in our community, and that we've identified tourism areas, have those areas zoned to welcome the types of businesses that we want to grow there. Since early 2017, we've been working interdepartmentally through our director and through planning services to ensure that tourism development is a component of our official plan. So our third priority, which a lot of you has been in the news a lot and is also very exciting, is special events enhancement. So making sure that our community is putting on successful events, marketing those events successfully to target audiences. This involves not only hosting events and making sure the events that we're hosting reflect the entire Leamington community, so that's also a part of where the culture component of my portfolio comes in. Many of which are outlined in our summer events guide, which launched on Friday. Most of you should have copies of, and if you don't, there's some at the back. But also serving as a municipal liaison for events already being hosted in the community and potential future events. So this also includes both managing some of the infrastructure that we have in our community to host special events, namely the Seacliff Park Amphitheater, measuring attendance at events and collecting data for internal use for things like grants, future program selection, and which marketing mediums have been the most successful for these types of events. And what's our target audience? What is bringing people to, or what people are coming to Leamington for our events? Or are in Leamington attending the events that we're hosting in town? So our final priority is marketing, promotion, and communication. So though it's our final priority, tourism development isn't linear. We'll of course be marketing our existing events and products as well as the On the 42 brand. We also continue to look for new ways to promote Leamington as a destination and stay up to date with the constantly changing trends. We truly are in a digital age. Young people specifically, the millennials that I've talked about, are increasingly moving away from traditional channels of media consumption, such as television, radio, and print, and towards downloading and streaming almost all of their content online. Therefore, a good portion of our marketing strategy relates to online sources, publications, social media, and advertising on social media platforms. Particularly, again, when you look at the millennial demographic, if you aren't online, you don't exist. It's the first place that we go for any source of information. And this is one of the things that we do when we work with businesses to help coach them on how they can build their online presence as well, which is a component of our department. Our primary focus in 2018 is going to be continued improvement of the On the 42 website, particularly search engine optimization, which is important in making sure that our website ranks high when key terms like travel and Leamington, tourism Leamington, visit Leamington, visit Southwestern Ontario, any of these different types of search terms that we pop up as first and foremost. So up on the screen, you'll see some of our website statistics, and I actually got a few more website statistics since I put my presentation together, and I got them this afternoon, that we're probably looking at visitors. We'd switched over our platforms for measuring our visitor attendance, that we've probably had closer to 45,000 visitors to our On the 42 tourism website since its launch in January 2017. So if you can take that number and inflate it to the page views and the hits, we're sitting at close to 1 million hits on our website. And close to 120,000 page views on our website. Bravo. So this is excellent. However, it also shows us a benchmark of where we need to go. Site and the first thing that people think of when they think of planning their trip and their visit to Leamington. So like I said, our engagement's good, particularly for a first-year site, but it gives us information of where we need to go. We've also launched a Tourism Leamington Facebook page, which happened on Friday after the launch of our summer concert series. So our post reach is, our engagement has been approximately 4,000 people by this morning. And our Sheepdogs event was hitting a post reach of 21,000 people as of this morning. So that's just in a couple of days, and that was all organic, which means that we didn't pay for any of that. That's all word of mouth and social media. So. I think that we see where the direction that we're heading and where people are getting their information from. I heard a statistic that if a millennial needed to hear about a major news event, 85% of them would turn to Facebook first before any other form of traditional media. So this is why we're going through this. Making sure that it's true as well is probably important. So we'll also be completing phases 1 and 2 of a video marketing project, which will be used at trade shows, on social media, through social media advertising, at some of the local cinemas, and as well on our website. So further details of the strategic priorities that I've outlined are laid out in the report. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, and thanks for taking your time on a busy Monday night.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Your Worship. Kira, I just want to commend you on an excellent report. It's exciting, the stuff you bring to us with your enthusiasm and getting all the partners here. I really appreciate that. It's exciting to see what's going to come as well as what's already here. Thank you. Good job.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Kira. I don't usually say this is a good report because I have expectations of good reports, but this is an excellent report. I will not say stellar because I said it once. And I rued the day I said stellar report. What I like is you've taken what has usually been just a bag of ideas or a bunch of ideas amongst a key group of people, and you've fleshed them out and you've made them concrete. And I think when organizations such as the ones represented here have something like that to go from, it makes the journey much more much easier. And it also makes the goals easier to obtain when you have something concrete and something with vision and marker. So good for you. This is a road we have not traveled down yet. And I'm truly hoping that it will be of benefit to everyone sitting here, every organization represented. So kudos to you. This is fantastic. This is heartwarming. And you're right about that, checking the news on Facebook, because that royal baby was announced on Facebook before it was on the news feed. And for me as a non-millennial, that was shocking. I grew up, I know I'm not, I hate to disappoint, but as someone who grew up reading the newspaper, watching, that for me was a shocking revelation this morning, that it would be there before here. So anyway, great job, awesome.
Councillor Hammond first. Okay.
Kira, that's a stellar report.
There's 4 more counselors, by the way. I can hear it 4 more times.
Just a question I have. In reading through this over the weekend, you talked about tourism being the second largest sector of the local economy. Is that our local economy?
Correct.
Correct. So that's amazing. I would have thought it would have been industrial. I mean, I'm assuming the largest sector is agricultural. But
Yes.
so to the points that the deputy mayor made, I mean, obviously you can see where we need to focus our attention. And again, what a great report, and it's nice to see that we're moving forward. And having your partners still here to applaud your efforts means a lot and goes a long way. Thanks, Karen.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, Kira, fantastic job. You're doing a heck of a job since you arrived here. It's noticeable, too. I'm involved in a lot of different plans and strategies when it comes to my work, and we want a measurable component on the back end of them. So I'm hoping in the future, as you, like some of the gaps that you identified up there, the tasks that you have, I'm hoping that you'd report back to council, almost like a measurable to, knock that off the to-do list, It's important that we get that information back as well as you accomplish your goals.
Through your worship, I'm so glad that you brought that up. We do plan on bringing back benchmarking reports, and particularly at the end of the summer, after a summer concert series, we'll be bringing back some of the data that we've gathered over the year, and then giving updates as to our strategic plan periodically to council, especially as we finalize different segments as identified in the report. So thanks for bringing that up.
And Councillor Verbicki.
Through the mayor, through you, I'd like to commend you, and that was a
Phenomenal.
stupendous stupendous report. And I just want to know, Deputy Mayor made a comment about what's before, I thought it said silent, but what's before the baby boomers? Do they have a name?
Silent.
It is silent. Okay, thanks.
It's a tough crowd. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Your Worship. Stellar. Is that about another one in there? Okay, another stellar. Anyway, just a couple of quick questions. With this, the day trippers as an example for our tourist study, what is the circumference that you would be attracting them in from, basically?
Probably within an hour and a half radius is a general for the first couple of years. Depending on the level of marketability that you have, you can see up to about 3 hours. But in the immediate year or two, probably an hour and a half is what we're looking at. So really it's our Leamington community, Windsor, Essex, Chatham, Kent, out to London, and then the boaters that can come across in that time frame as well.
Okay, and as well now with the branding of the 42, like the different municipalities are all on 42, are you meeting, like, is there some like interaction between you and your counterparts throughout the municipality? And I noticed that we have a representative of TWEPI here tonight. I'm not taking a shot at you, Lynette, but anyway, are you working with them as well, like in their brochures and so forth, to promote Leamington in that respect? Like, how is that all coming together for us?
Certainly, we work with our regional bodies, and I see the value in working as regional partnerships. To address your point of the 42nd parallel, we have been talking to other communities that have utilized that brand. I think that Leamington is the premier, not probably, but it is the premier on the 42 destination. What I do want to say is that what we do in Leamington, we can do well and independently of our regional organizations. However, the value that we see in our regional organizations is also imperative. So we utilize regionality when it's appropriate for us, and then we sort of forge our own path when it works for us. But we certainly do market in other communities, and we talk to members of there on how we can co-market and co-brand events. And I also sit on a regional tourism advisory committee with tourism representatives from the rest of Windsor, Essex. Yeah.
Mr. Neufeld.
With respect to TWEPI, there's been a lot of discussion around these tables about that relationship, and it hasn't always been strong. But I think in fairness, and I know I've said this before, the municipality of Leamington really hasn't provided that marketing arm with a product or products to market on our behalf. This is why our strategy, Akira's strategy, and the strategy of the Economic Development Office is about the development of product. So as we develop our product, the relationship with a marketing arm like TWEPI will become more valuable. It will also become more easily measured, both for them and for us, because to this point, we really haven't provided the product to allow them to show their value to us. You know, and we have been vocal about that. Is there the value? Well, we're going to see, because now we're going to give them the products and see just what they can do to help us. And it's important, I think, that you know, 3.5 years ago, there wasn't an economic development department. There wasn't a tourism. There wasn't a commitment to tourism in this same way. And this mayor and council said, you know, economic development is important, let's get somebody on that. Tourism is important, let's get somebody on that. So we've put the resources towards this, and you're just now starting to see how these strategies are developing and coming together. So I wanted to mention again that tourism is a part of economic development, And we're just getting started, and you can see, I think you can see the potential. We often talk about the decisions, the number of decisions that we as senior management and management make. And one of the things that we often talk about is data. Good data makes for good decisions. And what you saw here on this report is the drilling down into who is our customer, who are we going after, what is the age group that is spending the most, what are they looking for, rather than saying, let's develop a tourism strategy that would make me happy at my age. We are actually looking at where are the dollars available. They're looking for an experience. That's why we've honed in on that word experience. And I know Kira said that, but I want to come back to that, because developing a tourism strategy is more than the bricks and mortar, the visiting of places. It's having the experience, which includes the culinary experience. And finally, the thing I wanted to highlight on this is that Kira said it, but kind of slid over it, and I think it's important to go back to. It is our family members from afar who are our greatest pool or potential of people to become or entice to come as tourists. And what that means is that it's our residents that are our greatest ambassadors, that open the gateway to greater tourism in Leamington. We can have our marketing arms out there that letting people know of the events, but it is the events like we're going to be having this summer where our residents reach out to their family members who live outside of this area, who become our tourists in the first place. And so the strategy of having these concerts at Seacliff Park to draw free of charge, right, to draw the family members who don't live here, will drive the tourism to begin with. And that's a big part of our strategy. Now imagine what it's like when they get to Seacliff Park and they see our beach and our amphitheater, but then they also see our beach volleyball courts, and they see the pedestrian pier, our marina, and it will start to generate that interest, and they'll come looking for that experience more often. That's a big part of this strategy. So I just wanted to highlight a few of those things because I just think that those are so key to the strategy being successful. And good job, Karen.
My turn. First of all, I want to thank Hogs for Hospice, Chamber being here, BIA, TWAPI, and the Bank Theater. Hanging out the whole night, you guys. Good for you.
They're troopers.
Aren't you? Aren't you awesome? I mean, because you are our partners. And there are more partners out there that we need to start pulling in. The hotel owners, the B&Bs, and go on down the list, our local clubs. And I'm sure over time that's what's going to happen. Because when we work together as one great big unit in this town, we're a powerhouse. So again, thank you very much for being here tonight. The second thing I wanted to say was, and I want to say it to our finance department, legal department, our CAO, and our development services, I'm not ignoring you tonight. I feel very, very secure with what we're getting from those various departments. But I want to just kind of go over what I'm seeing happening here, how I'm feeling about this whole thing. We just had reports not that long ago from our planning department, so under Mr. Barnable's, we're seeing, to me, I'm seeing we're organized. We've got our hands around this. From our economic development office, we just had the report at our last meeting. We've got our hands around that now. And then tonight's report on tourism. I mean, that report says it all. We've got our hands around this. And this is the first time in my many years on council that I feel like I've got both of my feet on solid ground with our staff at administration, and we're firing on all cylinders. And this is just the best feeling I've had in a long, long time. So I'm saying congratulations to all of you, but especially tonight, Kira. I'm really happy to see, like, I'm blown away by, you're basically saying those are half of what they really are. Those are tremendous numbers for such a very short time frame for us. So good on you. Can you scroll back to your graph where you showed food and drink was number one? Right there. So what caught my attention was music and entertainment. And it says news. I don't understand that part of it. But music and entertainment is what caught me, because we're celebrating that again tonight with our Bank Theatre hitting their fundraising. We're spending a lot of money in that sector. And I know there are people out there that really just don't get it. They don't understand why we're doing this, why we built a $1.4 million amphitheater, why we're spending money on the Bank Theatre, why we're spending money on an art gallery, and why we're about to spend money on a library, which I think is going to make a lot of people very happy when it's done. But that tells it to me right up there. That's number 4 in what people are searching for now, when all along in all of our lives, us, what do we call them, baby boomers, we focused on the sports. That's where we've been spending the money. So not that I want to take it away from sports, but I'm happy to be able to justify why we're spending what we're doing on the arts. So.
And through your worship, because tourism is part of economic development, and we've always talked about the relationship between all these different things in our community, it's also what draws people to move to our community, to put down roots in our community, to stay in our community. And I think that those sorts of investments that keep people in town on the weekends, or people move down here and say, oh, not only do you have this amazing amphitheater, but you also have some great housing prices, and you got some good schools, and you've got an amazing library and an amazing theater. Those are the things, those investments that create a sense of place that make people want to not only visit here, but stay here. So I think it's all part of a circle of life, if you will.
Excellent. Kudos to you, and keep it going. So Councillor Rubicki is moving to receive the report. Councillor Dunn second. Further discussion? All in favor? And carried. Thank you very much. More happy news. Next report is one regarding the naming rights for the Leamington Dog Park. And Mr. Brown is taking us through that.
Yes, thank you, and good evening, Mayor and members of Council. This report is on an opportunity for naming rights for the Leamington Leash-Free Dog Park. Over the last year, development of the dog park has been initiated, and to date, all of the fencing has been installed. We're doing some tree trimming, clearing the brush out of the way, and improved some of the drainage. So there's still more work to be done there. We did plant some grass seed in the fall. Not a lot of it came up, but we did save some seeds, so we're going to be reseeding again this spring. In 2017, administration was approached by the Leamington Rotary Club to discuss some financial support from the Rotary to help advance the development of the dog park. So as a result of this discussion, Rotary committed to a $10,000 cash contribution, and combined with a $5,000 from the municipality. This $15,000 is in the 2018 budget to be put towards dog park amenities and improvements such as benches and play equipment. Further discussion between administration and the Rotary this year has resulted in a proposal from the Rotary for further development and maintenance of the dog park in exchange for naming rights. So the proposal includes, and I'll just kind of touch on what was proposed. So the term of the agreement would be for 10 years. We have the $10,000 cash contribution from this year for the equipment and the amenities, a minimum $2,500 cash and $2,500 in-kind labor contribution in each year, starting in 2019. The dog park to be named the Leamington Rotary Dog Park over the term of the agreement, and a sign be installed in the park acknowledging the contribution from the Rotary. So the total value of the commitment from the Rotary is $55,000 over the term of the agreement. Administration is recommending approval of the agreement as a way in which to develop, improve, and maintain the dog park through community support and volunteerism on behalf of the Rotary. And I would like to mention that there are some members of the Rotary in attendance tonight, so I thank you for coming out. And so the recommendation is that the municipality enter into an agreement with the Rotary Club of Leamington for naming rights of the Leamington Dog Park with terms and conditions consistent with the contents of the report. The dog park be named the Leamington Rotary Dog Park for the term of the agreement, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to enter into the agreement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions? All right, so Councillor Jacobs moved the report. Are you supporting? With comment, okay.
And thank you, Your Worship. I think that, and I've seconded that, I think this is a very generous offer on behalf of the Rotary Club. They've been one of the few clubs that have been able to survive and do very well in Leamington for I don't know how many years, and I'm sure they'll tell us. But, you know, pardon? But, you know, we've had the Kinsman Park for a lot of years, which I was a part of back in the day. The Kiwanis Camp, we're all familiar with that. So to see the Rotary name on the face of a park, I think is a great thing. And again, thank you for taking that into consideration. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Your Worship, I just want to add on Councillor Hammond's great work for the Rotary Club. All that you do for our community, we really appreciate it. And this just adds so much more. If you're a pet owner, it's just really huge with all the things that are coming with this report. And kudos to you, because all of our volunteer groups are huge and make a community. So thank you for all your hard work.
Okay, and if I can, to the Rotary, say a personal thank you on this. As a user of the dog park, and if any of members' council don't go down to the dog park, I can certainly loan them our dog for an hour every day for a week or two, and you can take him down there for a walk. It is really fantastic, Mr. Brown, what you've done down there, and I know that the users of the park are thrilled with what's already there. And I know it's not that much, because it's just the fencing and some groundwork that's being done. So it'll be really nice when the grass grows in and the water's taken away and the new equipment is in there. I'm sure everybody will be over the top excited about this. But to the Rotary Club, this is the first time your proposal has formally or being formally presented to council. So it's a lot easier to acknowledge at this time tonight and say thank you very much for your generosity, because it is extremely generous. And I remember a couple of years ago, Wendy, when you approached me and you said the Rotary wanted to step up and do something, and you were looking down at the waterfront and doing something big and something important that would be lifelong. And I think you've hit a home run on this one. So again, from the municipality, from all of us dog walkers, thank you very much for your generosity, and we'll use it in good health. So, thanks. Yeah. Yes. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next report is one regarding the Leamington Municipal Marina Security Services. Paul? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This report is the Security Services RFP for the Leamington Marina. The previous service provider's agreement expired at the end of 2017 voting season. Upon review of past security contracts, administration determined it was beneficial to solicit proposals from various security contractors. The nature of this process was to be able to select a service not solely based on price and give consideration to the company and guard qualifications, as well as the local client services. Administration posted the RFP on Monday, March 26th. The RFP closed on Wednesday, April 11th. There were 5 registered plan takers and 3 submissions received by the stated deadline. The RFP was written such that proponents were required to create their submissions based on the following criteria: proponent qualifications and organization, local client references, financial and timing, and guard qualifications. Administration conducted a review that included a general review of each submission, as well as detailed evaluation of each criteria. At the conclusion of this process, the commissioners were chosen as the preferred proponent. The 2018 Marine Operations Account has approved funding in the amount of $35,000 for this service, and this proposed contract is therefore within the budget. So the recommendation from staff is that council authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with the commissionaires to perform marina security services in the amount of $30,286.61 plus HST for year one, and $32,037.66 plus HST for year two.
Okay, thank you very much. Council? Councilor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Last week I brought up, we had a IT, Paul's smiling, knows where I'm going already. There was just a recommendation, no quote submitted as to the 3 submissions that you said were submitted to you. Again, I want to be very clear. I'm not questioning the integrity of anyone here. However, we're not getting any information on this. And I don't think, and we've said it before, and I think last week wasn't the first time, there were several times prior that we said, can you show us what those quotes are or what those submissions are? And if you're doing it on a scale, and then we don't need to know each line. In other words, if Joe Blow was a $100 submission, he was rated at 40%. Somebody else at $150, but he was rated at 90%. I think we just need to see that. You got a 143-page report here for us tonight. It would take maybe 3 lines to identify what those costs are. And I know I've asked for this before several times, and it hasn't come to us. And based on that, I won't even support this evening because I can't tell you what those quotes are. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I hear what you're saying, Councillor. I know that usually the RFP process is usually undertaken because there's a huge human resource component to what you're looking for. It's a service like engineering, in this case, guards. The qualifications of the we'll say the applicants or the proposals or the team that's going to represent you is as important as the cost. Now, when we're scoring, and we do look at the pricing and whether the pricing is within budget or not. And we will give equal weighting to a lower bid as we would for a bid that was within budget. But most of the weight, or a lot of the weight we look at, is in the qualifications of the people who are providing that service. Sometimes it's a bit subjective, and you know, we're looking at the references that are provided. So I hear what you're saying. We can provide the 3. We can tell you that the proponent that we chose may not have been the highest, but they were within budget and scored accordingly. So it was the highest score. But again, it's usually around a human resource component that we're looking at as much as we are the lowest bidder.
I respect what you're saying, and where I'm going with this. Like last week, it was with IT. And they did a weighted balance as to what they required, which I support. All I'm asking is, can we see what's going on? In other words, if there was 3 bids, submit the 3 bids and submit the score. Like, I'm not looking for an identification of each one, but at least give us something to look at. If we are bidding on a piece of equipment, we see 3 bids, and you know, I guess they're coming in under a basic criteria, and if it's accepted, and that's how the bid goes. But you're scoring them here, then all you come to us is saying, Joe Blow meets our criteria, so we want to submit the contract. I just want to see the pricing. So as I said, I won't support this. Thank you.
I guess my response to you, Councillor, is that that's why we pay the staff to do the job. If it was cut and dried, all just pricing, then I agree with you. That's what we get to see when we're buying trucks and other things like that. But this is an entirely different way of picking and choosing and hiring, and that's what our professional staff is supposed to be doing on our behalf. So I really don't have a problem with it at all, because if I see somebody who came in at $20,000 a year versus 32, we're automatically going to think, well, we should be taking the cheaper one. Well, no, but perception is that we'll always go with the cheapest one. This way, we're allowing our staff to do the job we hired them to do, and that is to make that recommendation back to us on who they feel is best to do that job. And I know you have asked for it, but council has not asked for that kind of detail to come back. 'Cause I know you're getting frustrated at it, but we ourselves, as a whole, have not given any direction to admin to make it happen that way. And I think the reason is because we just don't want to get into their jobs. It's not really why we're here, is to pick apart every little piece of the job they do. So that's just my answer back to you. Yes, you can.
I thank you for the time. I'm not looking to criticize what they're doing.
No, I understand.
All I'm saying is, if they are submitting to us a recommendation, I'm not saying we're taking the lowest one, I'm not saying we're taking the highest one, and they might not accept any of them. But they're reading it. That's fine. I have no problem with that, and I have no problem with the cost. I just want to see what the cost and what the reading is. I'm not arguing it. Same with IT last week. They had specifications, which I can understand, and especially when you're getting into technology that they're working with, they want to know something that they're familiar with and have a backup for. And I don't disagree with that. All I'm saying is, what's with the numbers? Just show me the numbers. That's all I'm asking. I'm not questioning, and I'm not questioning their integrity, and I'm not questioning what they're doing with this. I'm just saying I want to see some numbers.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Worship. I think Councillor Jacobs raises a good point, and I think he wants to hear the opinion of the rest of the council as well. I think this would be a great discussion for us to maybe have in the future as a council, is discussing what he's saying here. I don't see the harm in it. I put a lot of weight. You're right. When it comes to apples for apples, if we were buying a lawnmower, it's pretty simple to put those numbers down.
Yep.
I put a lot of trust and a lot of faith, and I endorse the system that we're using of rating or a scale. And I'm going to put a lot of weight into the recommendation of the professionals that we hire to do this. But I don't see the harm in having those three, especially when I get approached after the fact. You know, if I happen to be out getting a coffee and, you know, there's a local provider in there, it'd be nice to have something a little bit more to come back with, a little bit more teeth, let's say, you know, to kind of give them better explanation. So I hope in the future, you know, we could maybe have that as a discussion up here. You know, maybe look at doing things a little differently, but I don't see the harm in having those numbers. That's my opinion.
Okay. Councillor Verbeke.
Well, I thought this was a no-brainer, but apparently the vote may change tonight, and I just want to know what could happen in the meantime. Are we going to have to reissue this again if it gets turned down? Or are we going to tell people they can't put their boats in there or use the boats at your own risk now or the dock? So where's it going to go from here? Or I guess we should wait till after the vote.
Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thank you. You know, I tend to agree with the question raised by Councillor Jacob and the comments made by Councillor Wilkinson. You know, we're the ones that are going to be out there trying to identify. I mean, here we're talking about $32,000, but the one we had 2 weeks ago when we talked about lighting the Unico side of the arena was a considerable amount more. And I think that when Councillor Jacobs raised the point then that we need to see, or we'd like to see those, I would have thought, especially in this one, which is only a $32,000 report, we would have seen some demonstration. I too am not questioning what the staff is doing. That's not the issue. But to be able to justify it, to better explain it to someone else, I too think it should be there.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For me, it's about being open and transparent. That's what it's about. It's not questioning anybody. And what's the harm in listing the other two? For us, yeah, it may be staff's professionalism, but the buck stops with us. We have to answer to the people who are paying the bill. So if we don't disagree with Councillor Jacobs, or if any other councillor has a request, I'm assuming most of us would go along with it unless we debate it or argue it. So for you to say that none of us debated it or said anything in agreement with them didn't mean we were against it. So to me, I think there's some validity. I certainly wouldn't hold up the process. I would say, even next time, let us know what the quotes were. That's all I'm taking that he's asking for. That's what I took 2 weeks ago. He's just saying, show me the money. Show me who was engaged. That's it. It's not trying to be micromanaging. We have to answer to those people. That's how I see it. And I too am a little bit hesitant when things come to us and we're not getting the whole picture. Then I get a little flag that waves. So I don't think he's wrong. I think it's a very simple request. It's not putting anybody on the firing, in front of the firing squad. It's just saying, give me all of the information so I can understand it better, and I can. And maybe 9 times out of 10 we don't get asked, but at least we know who was in the running.
Mr. Neufeld.
Well, I'm going to give a different perspective on it. In a number of situations, their bids are proprietary. They don't want their competitors to know what their amounts were that came in here. They know what the fairness of the process is. And I think it should give council some great comfort to know that anyone who's bidding on a job who feels that the process isn't fair has recourse to come to us and to ask those questions, because they know what the criteria was going in, and if they think that that criteria is unfair to begin with, they have the ability to say so. So checking up on it, you say just show me the numbers, but in a case like this, the numbers aren't the determining factor. It is one of the factors, but there are a whole bunch of other factors. In which case, then there will be a questioning about, well, how much are you weighting the experience, and we'll get into the minutia of the decision making. So I understand what has been said here, but I caution council on requesting so much information that we don't get companies starting to bid, for fear that their losing bids will show up on the docket for their competitors to see. And secondarily, like I say, if there are questions about the fairness of the process, the question can come right to administration. There can be complaints lodged about that. I just caution council with those comments.
Okay, so how be we deal with this subject matter first, and then maybe under open session we can bring this topic back up and discuss it further. And you don't have to vote on it if you don't want to, John, but okay. Because I think this matter is separate from what we're talking about in this report. And in the light of getting through council meeting, let's do that. And then under open session, maybe we can come back to this request. So we do have a recommendation before us for the security. Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Your Worship. I've got to make my comments on this as well. I'm sorry, I got to jump in, but I too feel that we need a little more meat for the potatoes, not saying just to have a little more information to give back. I don't, with this, if we vote on this and then something happens, then it's got to go through the process again. And you don't want to leave things shy when the running of our marina, and we don't want to do that either. So is there more here can it be deferred? Do we if we shut it down right now, and if it gets voted off, because like what's the recourse at that point in time then? Do they have to go out and or that's already done, or I mean that kind of thing? So this is something to have on to better understand.
I think if you do not pass this, and that I would suspect they'd have to go back to RFP again and start all over. I don't really know, but the budget was for $35,000. It came in at $32,000. I know you don't have all the little details that you want, but we know we have to have the security guards for the marina. We're talking openly about this, and I've offered to bring this back up under open session so that we can direct administration in that fashion as to what we're looking for. So, Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thank you, and I think that's a great idea. I mean, I'm certainly going to vote in favor of this because I think that, and I understand Councillor Jacobs' position. He's wanting to make a point, and but we do trust in the integrity of the author of the report and administration and what they do. So having said that, I'll move the acceptance of the report, and I welcome your suggestion about dealing with it in open session.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Dunn and Deputy Mayor.
Further to that too, Councillor Jacobs, I don't want to see this go back. I don't want it to go back to the drawing board. I think you've made your point. That you want to discuss things like this further, so I will be supporting it as well, because to lose this at this point in time over that is not what I want to do. But I do want to continue having a discussion, even if we don't do it tonight since it's 8:45, if we do it at the next council meeting, if that needs to be a notice of motion or whatever. I think it is a conversation to be had, but I'm not willing to forfeit this. I'm sorry.
Councillor Jacobs, yep.
Thank you, Worship. Under no means am I trying to have this defeated. I just, as the Deputy Mayor stated, I just made a point, and I feel very strongly about it, and that's why I will not support it. And I'm not looking to have it shot down. There's no animosity here, believe me, and there's, as far as integrity goes, there's no, you know, I feel everyone is above reproach with this whole system, and I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Berbiki.
Really, Mayor, I'm going to support it, and I would like to say that whoever does the agenda for the next council meeting before this is done, I hope that if there is something comes up, that we do have the numbers, so we don't have to rehash it again. So whatever, there's another tender or something coming up, make sure that we have the information before the next discussion.
Okay, so we have motion on the floor. Call a vote. All those in favor? And motion, and opposed, and motion carries. So we'll move on to the next report is the Committee to Review Compensation, and Ms. Percy.
In 1999, the Township of Mercia and the Town of Leamington amalgamated. The Transition Board directed the CAO to develop a process to allow for an independent overseer to recommend council remuneration for the Public Utilities Commission, Leamington Police Services Board, and the Committee of Adjustment. In 2012, on Council's direction, a committee was again formed to review the council remuneration and policies related. The premise of the committee is to survey local municipalities to ensure that the levels of remuneration and allowable expenses are competitive. In order to ensure diverse representation from the community and consistent with this committee structure that was held in 2012, it's recommended that the committee again be comprised of 2 residents of Leamington, ratepayers, 1 representative from agricultural, 1 representative from manufacturing, and 1 representative from retail. It's anticipated that the committee will finalize their report by midsummer and bring it back to council for consideration. The financial impact would be dependent on how council wishes to proceed with the review of the remuneration rates. No funds have been allocated to compensate the members of the Council Compensation Review Committee. So the recommendations before council are that a committee to review and recommend the level of compensation for the mayor and council, Leamington Police Services Board, Committee of Adjustment, and Union Water Joint Board of Management for the term commencing December 1st, 2018 be established. The terms of reference as outlined in Attachment A to the report be approved. The committee be comprised of 2 residents of the community, 1 representative from the manufacturing sector, 1 representative from the agricultural sector, and 1 representative from the retail sector. The clerk, in consultation with the manager of human resources and director of finance and business services, be delegated authority to select and appoint the members to this committee, and upon completion of its mandate, the committee to be dissolved.
Deputy Mayor, moved by, seconded by Councillor Berbiki. Discussion? All in favor? Carried. Next one is the report regarding use of corporate resources policy. Ms. Percy.
Section 88.18 of the Municipal Election Act requires that before May 1st in the year of a regular election, municipalities and local boards establish rules and procedures with respect to the use of municipal or board resources, as the case may be, during the election campaign period. It's necessary to establish guidelines on the appropriate use of corporate resources during an election period to protect the interests of both the corporation and the members of council. The Act prohibits a municipality from making a contribution to a candidate. As the contribution may take the form of money, goods, or services, any use by a member of council or of the corporation's resources for his or her election campaign would be viewed as a contribution by the municipality, which is a violation of the Act. The policy reflects the recent amendments to the Act with regard to third parties and updates the definition of resources. Policy C07, Election Corporate Resources, dated March 15, 2010, will be replaced with the approval of this policy. There's no financial impact associated with this policy, and the recommendation is the use of corporate resource policy be approved, and that policy C07, Elections Corporate Resources, dated March 15, 2010, be repealed.
Moved by Councillor Berbicki, supported by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion? Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. Previously, like we receive a partial remuneration for our cell phones and so forth. Once that's declared, is that removed again, or is that continued? How does that work out?
Certain council members are given a stipend for the use of their personal cell phones rather than the town supplying them with one. Actually, I think internet too, aren't we? So, so you're asking when the writ, well, not the writ, whatever.
Yeah, I know that, like, at the last election, I declared in January, and they shut off everything. But
Right.
you're still using your phones and everything for continuing, because mine's published, my cell phone number. I'm just wondering, is that...
But just the compensation is...
Yeah,
is
that's discontinued.
terminated.
Is that...
So nothing in this policy will prohibit council from completing and conducting their duties till the end of this council term. Are you referring to the previous report?
I can't remember, so. We'll leave it with finance and they can get back to us on that particular question. Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Your Worship. It notes in this, in your report, nomination day for a regular election is the fourth Friday in July in the year of the election. Is that what it is this year? Because I know the dates changed for when because previously it was January we were allowed to start, and if you just elaborate on that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Sure. Nomination period opens on May 1st at 9 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. and nomination day is on July 27th at 2 p.m. Nomination day is July 27th at 2 p.m. So that is the last time or the ending of when a candidate can file their nomination papers, and but the campaigning for a candidate starts when they file their papers.
It's kind of a misnomer for our mindset. We're not really being nominated, we're nominating ourselves more or less. So it's the last day in which you can be nominated to run for council. So, yeah. It's just, I know. Yep, no worries. All right. So there's a recommendation there, I assume. We do already? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of that? Carried. And the final report is one regarding conditional building permit agreement for 50 Seacliff Drive. Ruth.
Thank you. The owner of 50 Seacliff Drive East has executed a site plan agreement with the municipality in respect of that property. A copy of that site plan is attached, and you'll note there's a row of parking spots located at the south. The site plan shows a canopy running west from 40 Seacliff Drive East, which is a property owned by an affiliated company of the owner of 50, and that structure runs to Cherry Lane. The canopy is pre-engineered. It provides shelter for those parking spots and apparently can't be altered without delay or further engineering, and that would be an expense to the owner. Once the canopy is erected, it's going to be closer to the property located to the west, being that 40 Seacliff Drive, than is permitted under a comprehensive zoning bylaw. This was overlooked when that site plan was filed and approved by administrative staff. The owner is therefore requesting an exterior side yard deduction and an interior side yard reduction. As I indicated, that setback problem was not discovered at the time of site plan approval. Therefore, administration has advised the owner to proceed with a minor variance application, and that's to be heard tomorrow, and administration is supporting that application. It would not affect any property other than the property located at 40 Seacliff, which I indicated is owned by an affiliated company. The chief building official can issue a conditional building permit, and that is required because there is a 20-day appeal period following the Committee of Adjustment decision. As part of the requirement to obtain a conditional building permit, an agreement is required to be entered into by the applicant. That agreement provides for the applicant to assume the risk in commencing the construction, obtain all approvals, file plans and specifications as required, and at his own expense remove the building and restore the site if the approvals are not obtained. There's a draft attached to your report. And the recommendation is that council authorize the entering into of that conditional building permit agreement, subject to the owner obtaining the minor variance from the Committee of Adjustment tomorrow.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by the Deputy Mayor with comment.
Wow, we've never seen anything like this before.
Boy.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, Councillor Ham, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I did spend some time today, Deputy Mayor and I are both sit on the Committee of Adjustment, and it's kind of unique. And I did spend some time today with Ruth and Mr. Posloff, and also went up to planning. And it's unique in the fact that, you know, I don't know if it's happened, at least not in our term. It hasn't happened before. I mean, it's quite a significant, and I don't think council's aware of this. We're looking at cutting this back to 7.78 of a meter is being reduced from 15 meters. And I'm having difficulties making comments here because I think it's something that's, you know, that's going to be an issue that's going to be dealt with, as you know, tomorrow night at Committee of Adjustment. I do understand it has really nothing to do with, I mean, they want to expedite things, and that's why council is being brought to them tonight. But if you want to hear some interesting conversation, you might want to come out tomorrow night.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Deputy Mayor, I feel on this, I've lost my energy to fight anymore with this project. I used to sit on Committee of Adjustment as well, and this is a great example of this entire project here of do as I feel and I'll ask for forgiveness afterwards was the feel that I got about this project. So I tapped out a few sessions ago in regards to this project here.
Okay, I just want, before I go back to all of you, my question is going to be tonight, this report is just asking us to approve it if it's approved by the Committee of Adjustment. So knowing that the Committee of Adjustment operates as a court, right? I think we really have to measure our words here tonight. So if you can't, then just hold them until tomorrow night. But if you can, then who had their hands up? Councillor Verbeke?
So that was my question, Worthy Mayor. I think you kind of went around it the right way. That doesn't matter what we say here tonight, it's what they do tomorrow night, correct? And then,
Yes.
and then let the chips fall where they may, and then we may have to revisit this at another meeting. Thank you.
That's right. Deputy Mayor.
I'm not going to say anything further. I was being tongue-in-cheek. I'll make my comments tomorrow.
Okay.
But we all know that it's come to us many, many times for this whole project. But I also am weighing it out as to what the project is, what it looks like, and what the quality of it is. So that being said.
Okay. Councillor Dunn.
Through your worship, the only comment I just have is the safety or security of getting so close to the sidelines, but that'll be brought in front of the Community Justice and they can deal with it. Alrighty, I'm good with that then.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? No what? I had a mover and a seconder. Yep, okay. All in favor? Motion carries. All right, report on closed session.
A closed meeting was held at 5:30 PM prior to the open session of council pursuant to subsection 239(2)C of the Municipal Act for the purpose of considering confidential report LLS 2418 dated April 12, 2018 regarding expropriation of lands, 971 Point Peely Drive, Leamington. Councillor Dunn declared a pecuniary interest and left the meeting. Council provided direction to administration on the matter. Proper notice of the meeting was given, and the meeting adjourned at 5:45 PM.
And you don't require anything from us? Okay. Then we'll go on to consideration of bylaws.
Council will note that bylaw 18-18 is not being considered this evening. It will be added to an agenda of a future meeting for consideration. So bylaw 19-18 being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 890-09 for the municipality of Leamington, which pertains to the subject land ZBA 165, 223 to 275 Bevel Line Road. Bylaw 2418 being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw 890-09 for the municipality of Leamington, which pertains to the subject lands ZBA 164, 1107 County Road 14. Bylaw 2618 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the municipality of Leamington at its meeting held April 23, 2018.
Councillor Verbicki?
I don't know how much longer the council meeting is going to take. We're the mayor, but I have a house full of people there now. You know my situation, so I don't know if like there are going to be long-winded speeches after this or stuff. I would be asked if I could be excused now.
You absolutely have my permission to be excused. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy 75th.
All right, so we have the consideration of bylaws before us, moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Jacobs. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. All right. There were no notices of motion circulated, so we go into open session. So how be we just jump right on to Councillor Jacobs' requests, actually, most of your requests in regard to the reporting of the RFPs. So my question to you is what actual details do you want to see? And you consider what the CIO has said, that some of these quotes that we get in some of these situations are proprietary, meaning they don't want their name revealed, they don't want anything about themselves revealed. So how do you want that report to come to you? Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you. Well, first off, if it's proprietary, or whatever I'm trying to say,
Yep.
and it's a municipal bid, they should be well aware that it gets out. I mean, it's no different, I don't think, than a car dealership or whatever it is we're bidding on, whether it's construction or whatever. These bids are public knowledge. So I don't know. I guess I'm somewhat thrown back with the CEO's comments in respect to that. Well, I'm not, personally, I'm not asking for a lot of detail. I mean, if there was 3 bids, 3 quotes, here's the ratings, goodbye. That's all. That's all you're asking for. I'm not asking to get detailed, whether it's 1.2% in favor and this one's 3 or, whatever. I don't know. I guess to me it's, what's the saying? Not only is it above board, it must be perceived as being above board. And I guess that's where I'm going with this.
Okay. Mr. Neufeld.
There's nothing stopping council from coming in to see the information with administration ahead of time. Or even afterwards, we're more than happy to share the information with council. I suppose that might be one consideration that council might have, that phone call and 10 minutes before the meeting, we can certainly show it That's a suggestion.
Well, if I may, Your Worship, to me, it's just perceived that it comes out in the manner it comes out. It's a rubber stamp. This is what we're presenting to you, and that's it. So, and that's where I'm going with it. And like I said, heaven help, I am not by any means, challenging the integrity, the honesty of our administration or our management people or anyone else. I think they've done a fantastic job and continue to do so. That's not the question. The just question is the transparency, as the deputy mayor said. And I'll leave it at that. It's up to the rest of these guys, whatever they want to do.
Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thank you. I think that because we have faith in our administration, I think that they're better suited to determine what can and cannot be put in the report. And I think there can be enough put in a report that'll satisfy the needs that have been brought forward by Councillor Jacobs, and also with some discretion with respect to how much privacy that we can let out. So my recommendation would be, let's leave it to the different areas, and when they submit their reports, and let them determine how much information that they can submit to us, so we do have a better idea.
That's what this report did. In essence, that's what it did, right? So I know you're looking for more detail. So if I can, Paul, in this case, in your report this evening, how many comparables would there have been in that consideration? I know you listed 5 different things, but in your rating, how many comparables in those?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think there were 13 different variables that we looked at. Again, in this particular case, we're dealing with security guards, so their experience and their references, I won't say get a higher, they get a higher rating than cost, if cost is within budget. Okay? So,
is there a way of taking all of those 13 comparables and putting it into the summary of the rating?
I think it depends on what the RFP is for. Again, this one is so much about the people that they're going to provide and the organization that it's difficult to really drill down and provide counsel, with each piece or each variable that we look at. Sometimes it's just the quality of the, it's like a term paper in university. Sometimes it's just the quality of the term paper, of the presentation of the document that you receive. We'll give a score for the presentation. How it's laid out, how it's organized, again, their references and their qualifications, their number of years that they've been, they've been in service. So it's, and I guess we can always provide counsel with the raw quotes, the 3 numbers. We can give counsel the price range, so counsel knows we didn't necessarily take the highest. Sometimes a good indicator in an RFP is you took the middle one. It kind of shows that you look for that balance, or your scoring system worked because you found that one that was in the middle. But it's difficult. I understand what Councillor Jacobs is saying, and I know that, and I take no offense by it. But there's a lot of variables in looking at an RFP, and what the CAO had said, which I think is a great idea. I think if you saw or could come in and see the submissions for yourself sometimes before you make the decision and have that conversation with us, and we show you the presentations and the differences in the package, because sometimes your lowest price is sometimes it's not always your best package that you receive. But I think that's a great idea. If you guys wanted to see the submissions and come in and talk to us about it beforehand, I think that would be great.
In the case of considering the privacy, which has been mentioned, if you were reporting as you do now, and you say this company, which you name, is who we're recommending, and then just said company B, C, D, and E, right? You're not identifying them. Would that be a way of getting around the proprietary nature of it? And I know it's a legal question if Ruth wants to jump in.
There's no simple answer to these questions because a lot of it really depends. Sometimes it's not inappropriate to disclose the final amount of the proposal. Sometimes it is inappropriate if you're bidding on, say, individual components. That's where the proprietary interest attaches. Sometimes it's appropriate to disclose the names of all of the proponents, and sometimes it isn't. So I hate to give a blanket answer because a lot of it depends on the type of request for proposal and the submissions that are given to us to evaluate. What I don't think is inappropriate is to provide council with the evaluation criteria and to provide council with the number of proponents and to give council the range of the the total submissions. So as an answer tonight, perhaps, that's how we can move forward.
Okay, thanks. So Deputy Mayor?
You know, over the years, I've never been a proponent of going for the lowest price, and it used to irk me when our previous solicitor would say, well, we have to go with the lowest price, because I always thought you get what you pay for, and we got it. When we hired that cleaning company, we went for the cheapest price, and boy, oh boy, they weren't long working here because they did not live up to what they said. So for me, I'm fine with that. If we just get an idea of the price range, I'm never going to tell you to take the lowest price because I'm a firm believer in that. So even if it just gives us a little bit more of an idea so we understand the whole thing, I would be good with that. I don't know about Councillor Jacobs, but to me that would be good. We have an idea of what kind of price range we were in and also, well, obviously the final person, but I can live without knowing exactly who it is, and if you need to know, then go.
I'll come back to you. I got to go down the list. Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thanks again. You know, we talked about, in this case, about 13 variables. I don't think anybody wants to know the weighted scores for those variables. You know, I mean, but if you list the variables, and there may be some you can't, pick something, whether it be for security reasons, you can't list one of those variables. But at least those variables will show in the report. And some are, in this case, you had mentioned 13, some may have 5, some may have 2. And as I said, I'm familiar with pre-weighted scores, and I don't think those should appear in there at all. And I agree with the Deputy Mayor that I think we should get the best bang for our buck. I'm certainly not in favor of always taking the lowest bid either. So I think just a little more information and leave it up to your discretion as to what you can share with us. And if we don't feel it's enough, I don't think you want 7 people coming in on a Monday to question you about some of these reports. Monday's a busy day in here, and we all know that. So, I mean, I think we should strive just to try and look at a little more information. Maybe to Councillor Jacobs' point, it won't be enough, but time will tell.
Okay. Councillor Dunn.
Through your worship, I agree with Councillor Hammond. I just a little bit more information. I do like that option, though, that if they have more of the stuff that we can come in 10 minutes beforehand, if there's some more particular details. And no, we don't want to have everything in there. Yeah, because you don't want to kill a tree each time we have to get a report now. But I do appreciate you having that available to us and also having a little more information about better transparent as well as seeing what was. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm looking forward to seeing the quotes come here in the future now. I think we've given a lot of opinion and direction to our administration. I like the points that Ms. Orton provided here, and I hope that we, see improvements in the future. Let's give them that and see how it goes going forward. That's my thoughts.
Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Worship. This got blown way further than I thought it was going to go with this. I'm not asking for drilling down and what's the score, the price and the rating. That's it. I mean, if the guy was, in the middle range, the high range, the low range, is what the scoring is what's going to determine whether you're going to give that contract the individual or not. That's all. I'm not looking to drill down to the bottom of this thing. And there was I forget how it went, but when you got submissions, you took the highest and the lowest and you threw them both out, then you worked from there. I was in business. I did procurement as well. You know, yeah, I got a lot of cheap stuff, but it came out of China, it came out of somewhere that wouldn't work within my system. So you don't even look at it. And I respect it. And I don't want this to get blown out of proportion here at all. All I'm saying is, here's the prices, here's the rating, and that's why we took this one. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. So some compromises here and some direction to administration. And I'm sure between all of you, you can come up with something just absolutely simple for us to understand. Fair? And legal. And legal.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say that it is always awarded to the highest score.
Correct. Exactly. So, all right, we'll leave it with you, and we'll leave it at that. So, I think admin's probably got a clear idea of what we're as clear as it can be. All right. So let's go. We're all good. Just direction. Okay. So we're into open session. Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Worship. Through you, Your Worship. First of all, I'd like to bring forth from the BIA, May 5th, they'll be holding their uptown walkthrough and cleanup. So any of the councillors or administration, I know they'll be partnering with all of them as well, but anybody else who wants to come and be a part of it, they're opening up the doors for it. I think it's about 10 o'clock. And then I have one other thing from a constituent that called me regarding, and I know this is going to scare people, but a bylaw for cats, a limiting number of cats. And it was brought to my attention that there was over 20 cats into a property. The plumber wouldn't even go in there. They had to hold their breath going in and out of it. And it was a rental property. It's just that at what point's too much, and I know the administration, I've talked to bylaw, and they said, how can we enforce it? But the thing is that if you send it to, when it comes to the animal place, Humane Society, if you send it to them, they'll come out to check on the animals, just make sure that they're in good condition. But still, that's where their limitations are. And by reporting back to us of how many cats, then possibly there's something we can do. Other municipalities have something limiting the number of animals. When you get to the smell being so outrageous that it's outside the building as well as inside the building, is there something we can be done about that?
Ms. Percy.
I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, council did consider a report on a bylaw for cat licensing. Council did not wish to proceed that way, but had the Humane Society had come, and the alternative to that was the spay-neuter vouchers.
So that's our attempt at reducing the feral cat population. But we have not been willing to set the number. Like, I mean, who's to say how many cats is too many? I mean, some might say one.
Your Worship, that may be the case, but that's still, at some point, it becomes, I mean, how many dogs, how many, animals in one dwelling, and it becomes a health issue for not only that person as well as other people in and out. So
oddly enough, we do have a limit on the number of dogs you can have in a house in our bylaw, but those are dogs, and cats have never received the same level of scrutiny anywhere. So I don't know how to answer it, but
I know there's other municipalities that do, through your Worship, I know there is other municipalities that do have a number of cats.
Okay.
I've seen the bylaw.
All right. Open session again. Councillor Hammond.
Thank you again, Your Worship. I was pleased, along with CAO Mr. Neufeld and Deputy Mayor McDonald, we attended Friday night, we attended the retirement party for Chief Tim Berthume from the fire department.
Again.
We were at Sherman Station next door, again, yes. We had a great meal, lots of drinks, and it was a great night and a good send-off for a really nice fellow.
Very good. Mr. Neufeld?
I just wanted to remind everybody that this Wednesday here at Town Hall, I believe between 4 and 7, is the Public Information Center for the library renovations. There will be large drawings up. Somebody will be here, I think Paul Barnable will be here to help answer any questions about that. But I encourage you all to come out and see what is being proposed for the renovation of our library. It is quite fantastic.
Ruth?
I have two matters tonight. The first is that the boarding house study has been completed by our consultant. The study and administration's report will be provided to council with the next council agenda, so that is May 10th, but to be considered and presented at the May 28th meeting. So we're providing it to you with a couple of weeks for you to consider it and to read it over. Also, those persons who provided comments during the consultation process will be advised that the study and report are available to be viewed and advised when it will be presented to council. So that's the first matter. The second is just that the commissioners will be out in the municipality providing our proactive enforcement of the dog licensing bylaw, and that's starting tomorrow.
Okay. Get ready for phone calls. Okay, really quickly. Thursday, April the 12th, the Leamington Chamber had their annual general meeting, and the Deputy Mayor and myself and Mr. Neufeld, Councillor Hammond, Councillor Dunn, I think that was it, Larry, and Councillor Verbeke all attended. We got to listen to the President of the Ontario Chamber, Rocco Rossi, and what a great man he was. You couldn't help but like him, and a great message that he brought with him. So that was probably the best AGM I've been to in a long time for the chamber. Friday, April 20th, most of us were there again, the lucky ones that were able to be there, and participated in the grand ribbon cutting opening sort of the amphitheater, and had lots of media out finally to one of our important events all the way from Windsor and everything. So that was really good, and I've had an awful lot of very positive feedback on that event already and the facility itself. Today, Essex Power, our company, was here in Leamington with all sorts of volunteers planting a number of trees down in Mercia Park, and they've been doing that as a reward, I guess, for getting people to switch from paper billing to electronic billing. And so however many that happened, they contributed that many trees to each of the 4 ownership municipalities. And finally, I just want to say that, if we sit back and take a breath from all the stuff we deal with, of late there's been a lot of good news going on for us as members of council and our administration and our town. Like I say, with the amphitheater being officially opened up, and then tonight the Bank Theater hitting 400,000 plus, and more to come in. Our uptown rejuvenation, we're moving ahead on that on the Mill Street area. And as was just mentioned, we're going to see some pretty impressive designs on our library, and I just can't help but think you guys have got to be as thrilled and happy as I am at what's going on in our town. And it's taken a long time to get here, but boy, can you ever see it moving up now, eh? And that's due to all of us and all of the men putting our noses to the grindstone and getting her done. So good on us. Anyway, that's it. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to congratulate Tim Berthium as well on his retirement. I was unable to attend, Ms. Orton and I had to attend the police retirement function at the same evening. And so anyway, not that we didn't forget him, but he did a fantastic job for us, and I really appreciate all he did. So thank you.
Very much so. Okay. Statement of members, non-debatable. I have one. It's in the 3rd period, and Toronto is winning 2-1. Go Leafs, go. Move to adjourn. Councillor Jacobs and Councillor Wilkinson, all in favor, and carried.